Oh boy, another fun day in 2021, January 1st. A new year of fun, a new year of catastrophe, a new year of happiness, and yeah, a bunch of good stuff is gonna happen this year. So Lynn Wood, one of Trump's lawyers, called for Mike Pence to be executed, I guess, because Mike Pence is gonna be actually certifying the results, I guess, of the election. I think that's what I heard, which is kind of funny. Yeah, chair stream, yep. All right. So today we're gonna be talking about. Oh no, there's me. Today we're gonna be talking about echo chamber politics on Twitter, which should be a fun conversation. I'm just getting a couple things set up. Yeah, I'm optimistic. You can say I'm a little bit of a, you know, I see things a little too bright, Just a little too bright. Um, I might be getting a new microphone to stream with at school. So that should be cool. Hopefully some better audio quality. I don't like this microphone very much that I currently use, so having a better one is gonna be nice. All right, let me message. R. Twitter is a weird way of pronouncing America. Yeah, basically. Well, when you see stuff like this, all right, how is this? Why is dude, Epic Games? This right here, basically. So, civility politics, identity politics, all that stuff. People on the left will laugh at this and not realize how their inability to convey the same centrist civility message is a big reason why they don't win. Politics is largely a popularity contest, and we need to learn how to win it. So making fun of like Ossoff for talking about decency in politics, or making fun of like AOC for talking about AOC as Mama Bear or whatever. Why were I on your front page? I'm a far right progressive. I'm a corporate sellout. How do I feel about Kyle and Crystal's new podcast? I said on here that I think it's cool how they made it completely free, completely free. I don't like it. When people on the left make these podcasts and they're like, "This is only for organizing," and they're already rich, and then they make like $40,000 off Patreon. I think it's cool that they made the podcast without any paywalls, which is cool. Yeah, the algorithm. All right, more fun discussions. I wasn't gonna stream tonight, but okay. Joining the Discord channel. Yeah, I'm a corporate sellout, dude. At least the algorithm is being nice. Okay, I'm dragging this person in. Hello, I dragged you in, if you can hear me, whenever you're ready. Yeah, I'm funded by Big Nurse, actually. I'm profiting off of the vaccines. By the way, they don't work. Don't get a vaccine. It makes you turn into a zombie. And you'll get superpowers. Watch out. Yeah, I'll get Koch brother money. You'll know I get Koch brother money when I switch my channel to focusing on stock trades and stuff, and why capitalism is really, 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 really good. I support super capitalism though, not regular capitalism. All right, let me message this person. Could you not? Is your microphone muted? And that's why I can't hear you? No, I can't hear you. Make sure you go on your profile, bottom left, and make sure there's not a little slashy mark over your microphone. To make sure your microphone isn't muted.
Best algorithm find ever.
Thank you. Thank you, Cynical Overdose. I haven't said anything yet. Thank you for the $3, by the way. I haven't. Yeah, best algorithm find. Cool. Yeah, you see the corporate sellout right there? You see that guy? Bernard Sanders? Yeah, he's a corporate sellout. Yeah, if anybody's wondering, if you donate through Streamlabs, it'll be like text to speech, so you'll hear the message. All right, the person I'm supposed to be talking to is leaving and coming back, I guess. You have to make sure your computer. Okay. You have to make sure your computer microphone is hooked up correctly and it's unmuted. If I drag you between channels, it still says your microphone is muted, so maybe I'll watch the Kyle show and the Crystal show while gaming. Maybe I'll do a gaming stream or something, I don't know. People don't even like that stuff, so why would I do it? But, I like games, so. Was I muted? That's so upsetting. I'm trying to get this Discord set up. But yeah, Ryan Knight. I think this person is a grifter. So their at is now Proud Socialist, and they're basically like 100% like Bernie or bust, 100% like Jimmy Dore-esque. But before, this is March 11th of 2019. Pete Buttigieg, you were great on stage tonight and deserve a spot on the DNC stage. You were great tonight speaking. And this person became a really ardent Warren supporter. And the moment Warren dropped out, the moment she dropped out, the exact moment, he went from complete like liberal to full-blown populist socialist, proud socialist on Twitter. And now he says stuff like this, which is a little bit unbelievable for me that you can change your entire worldview in that amount of time. You got that stimulus in Russia, dude. You know what sucks? If you are between the age, say you're like a 19-year-old right now, or a 20-year-old or a 21-year-old. Oh, Happy New Year, Preek. But say you're like a 20-year-old, 19-year-old right now, and uh, say you moved out of your parents' house. You work a job, you support yourself, you pay your own rent, you do all that stuff. You don't get the stimulus check if you were a dependent on the 2019 tax returns, which is pretty freaking shitty. So you're a 20-year-old, just moved out, paying your own rent, and now, due to the writing of the legislation, if you were a dependent in 2019 and you're independent now, you still don't get any stimulus. You didn't get the $1,200 and you don't get the $600. I think that's pretty shitty. Terrible policy. And then you're seeing people that don't need the money at all get it. That should be the debate on, the wrong people getting it, not what McConnell said. He called it socialism for the rich. Yeah, I'm trying to get this person set up on Discord. They didn't leave the call yet, and join back into the channel. I think this person is a boomer. Yeah, and yeah, your case too. If you made $100,000 in 2019, but you make half that now, you're not gonna get the money as well. Even if you're in a shitty position now. Yeah, McConnell called it socialism for the rich because some money is going to people who currently make like 75,000 a year. And if you're like a family of like 4 or 5, then you can make up to like 300,000 before you get nothing. But even if say you make right below that maximum number, you still get a reduced number of the stimulus. So it's not like you get the full $600. Yeah, if Erica can do it, so can the boomers. Yep, just waiting. Just waiting. Right here. There I am. I'm waiting and waiting and waiting. By the way, I set up a new Reddit account, which will grow over time. I'll focus on that as time goes on. Yeah, ironic coming from Mitch McConnell. Dude, 2021 can be such a good year if we get that news report. Mitch McConnell fell down a flight of stairs and he didn't wake up. In a video game, you know. If Mitch, if Mitch McConnell plays Minecraft and he falls really far, I mean, then it'd be kind of funny, but not in real life, but in Minecraft. All right, I'm just waiting. What do you think about Kyle and Crystal Ball doing a podcast together? It's gonna be a cool. I said I'm happy. It's free. It's gonna be an echo chamber convo, of course. They don't disagree on literally anything. They did the first one with Marianne Williamson. Maybe I'll watch that then. It's terrible being the parent of a 17, 18-year-old child who typically costs more than children under 10. Yeah, sure, yeah. Yeah, 17-year-old kid will cost a lot, especially if you want to like let them continue to do activities um other than literally just giving them food. But the government wants you to starve. They don't want people to be happy, of course. They want you to do, make just enough not to starve. It's literally like peasants in feudal times with the owners of the land saying like, "Hey, we're going to make sure to give them enough money so they don't rebel and they don't starve." That's the two goals. We are living in neo-feudalism. There's not much of a difference between what that was and what it is now, other than the material conditions of people today is relatively better, of course, on average and on a base level. Kyle is sharp. That's what we're going to talk about today, actually, if this person can connect. But I don't see any signs of life. But it's the echo chamber on Twitter that's ruining him. It really is. When you're giving political advice, you need to be able to understand different voter demographics. You can't just understand what's on Twitter, or you get really confused. When, by the way, like a person like Joshua Collins for Congress or whatever, that kid, that truck driver that he was autistic from Washington, I think. He was so famous on Twitter, but he got less votes in the primary than a dead man, literally. He got like 1,000 total votes, but he raised like $500,000 on Twitter. He was so popular, but he turned out to be a grifter. Or Cenk from the Young Turks running in real politics. He barely got any support whatsoever. On Twitter, it seems like those people would do great in real politics. And when someone like AOC is successful, people who are on Twitter assume her success is a result of her following on Twitter and, that organization. When in reality, real politics is a lot more difficult than simply populism. It's not that easy. So when AOC says something like, "Hey, Nancy Pelosi is Mama Bear," she is doing that for a calculated reason. Unless if people literally think AOC is stupid, which I have heard, or, Bernie Sanders is stupid, they are doing that for a reason. You can disagree with them for trying and getting, trying to get political power in a real way by getting votes, but don't call them stupid because you don't understand what they're doing or because you don't feel like getting into the grime of real politics. Well, I'm young and on the left, but I'm just, I don't know, maybe I'm a different case or something. But yeah, I mean, I was in that position a year ago. I was 100% like them. Like, I believed the exactly same premise of reality. Yeah, anyone who disagrees with me isn't a real progressive. Here, let's try this. Hello, I joined a call. Can you hear me?
Hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now. Great.
So sorry about that. I'm
Uh,
very sorry, man.
oh
I've
no,
been
you're
out.
good. Yeah, so can you please lay out what you want to talk about?
Yes. You and I seem to have a very similar kind of a lack of a better term, a political awakening that we've seen to like to, use the same talking points that like people like Kyle Klinsky and Jimmy Dore would use on basically how like both parties are the same, and that I don't want to say like a burn your bus direction, but more so how can I say that the Democratic Party's platform should be like should run as left as possible. And I feel like from the 2020 election, Bernie losing, that's not really an effective strategy. Do you think that's what happened to you as well?
Do you mean the strategy of saying everybody else is evil and we need to be like 100% progressive and populist?
Kind of like that, yes.
Yeah, so my big issue with the left right now, and I was just talking about the Twitter left, people tend to not understand what real voters are thinking, and they don't understand how to get real voters. It's not simply all populism. It's not simply all, being the person that is fighting for others. Although that is a good virtue, and it does work in certain areas, the demographics of the Democratic Party are set up in a very particular way. So, for example, when AOC goes on The View and calls Pelosi Mama Bear, that's a calculated decision she is making to try and get that vote. People on The View don't like Bernie. The View hosts don't like Bernie. People who watch The View do like Nancy Pelosi. If progressives want to win more political power, they need to be able to swoon more centrist Democratic voters. And like John Ossoff right now, in Georgia, he made a tweet about civility politics, basically. He said, 4 years of hatred is enough. It's time we build politics out of love, compassion, and decency. And I agree. I don't personally like that message. I don't like all the gooey stuff. I'd rather get down to the real core issues of how Americans are, struggling today in America. But when we talk about how to win races, this is why the left loses, because they would rather laugh at those attempts to connect to those voters instead of trying to learn what those voters actually want out of politicians they vote for. And although big corporate influence is a big reason progressivism isn't successful when it comes to the propaganda campaigns and everything, we can't blame literally everything on that. Because if we do what like the forced to vote people are doing, if we ignore where public opinion actually is, if we ignore what voters actually want, then we're going to make bad strategic decisions. And we can't blame literally everything on corporations when there's so much we need to do to improve. And that's basically my thing about that.
Yes. And I also think that's also because people like us tend to spend their time online and tend to hear like these voices, and they often take polls at headlines, like they take them too literally and don't ignore the other context. When in reality, like a lot of like the Democratic base is not online. They're usually kind of like you said, the View viewers or whatnot, and they kind of view us as like the far radical left, and they already want, and AOC knows that, and she doesn't want to like be that person because none of the centrists wouldn't want to hear what she has to say. Would you agree?
Yeah, we want to take over the party without them knowing we took over the party. We don't need to come in as super radical, anti-establishment socialist in order to get our progress done. Like, we don't need to be adverse to the Democratic Party. We want to show Democrats we are the real Democrats. Like right now on Twitter, the hashtag supercapitalism is trending. I love that stuff. I want everybody to think we are the real people fighting for the issues they think the Democratic Party is caring about. And I understand people get mad at that. They might think it's a bad strategy, but don't yell at the people who are trying to understand the system. Don't call them fake progressives or whatever. And what we're seeing right now is such a divisive movement that's trying to separate the left. And it's honestly not that big of an issue, but it still is because Twitter isn't real life. If I ask any normal organizer for progressivism in my state, for example, they know nothing about like forced to vote. That's an only online Twitter thing. That is only on Twitter, and people on Twitter have an inflated self-importance of that website. With people like I brought up, I don't know if you heard me talking earlier. Joshua
Yes, I
Collins was so popular on Twitter. He literally got less votes than a dead man. Jank was so popular online. He got so many donations. He got
okay.
only 20,000 votes in that primary. He got like less than 5% of the total votes. That is a terrible outcome. And if we're unwilling to adapt, to where voters are, and by the way, it's really funny when I get into a conversation with one of these people, the debate ends up always going to, you know what, fine, I don't really care about what voters think. Like, that is what they say to me. And I'm like, okay, I'm trying to get voters. I'm trying to get political power. If you're not interested in that, I get it, but it's whatever, I guess.
Do you think people like Cenk Uygur didn't do so well because he's more so unknown, or more so because people has a stigma towards new media?
Well, I don't think. Okay, so someone like him, politics is largely a popularity contest. Like, I don't know if anybody
Yes.
has experience in like high school or college of like class president, but real politics is
Yes.
so similar to that. It's actually really scary how similar it
Oh yeah.
is. Most voters are pretty content. They're pretty content with life right now. And if you're not going to be, fighting for people and trying to get that big voter base that is pretty privileged, you're probably not going to win. And Jen came out, he was literally 100% like anti-establishment. I'm not going to try to be popular. I'm going to go fight the man. And the voters in that area weren't looking for that. They were not looking for somebody to
They're
be like
comfortable.
Jen. They were comfortable. And if we don't get comfortable people on our side by winning arguments, by, winning over voters that would support Pete Buttigieg or Joe Biden or Elizabeth Warren, if we can't win those voters, we are not getting progressivism done in the United States. It simply isn't happening. And I mean, it sucks. I wish we can just go like populism, populism, populism. And you know what? That does work in some places, but it doesn't work everywhere.
Yes, and one of the things I mentioned in a in one of your comment section is that a lot of times that even like lower to middle income people are oftentimes the most, how can I say, the most aggressive against progressive policies because they think that government intervention will make things worse for them.
Yeah, sure.
Like, would you
People are
say
very conservative.
in
Yeah.
your district, it's probably middle lower income, but but you say it's like 80% Republican. And I think, and
Yeah.
oftentimes the fact that Americans have a pretty negative view of government at large, and progressive talk about expanding government, and I think that kind of scares people that are like that could be nominally left leaning as well.
Yeah, many Democrats are very, very conservative. I don't think people really understand that this country is a big majority fiscally conservative country. A lot of Democrats are fiscally conservative social liberals, which is a difficult thing to get across. When you're trying to pass progressive economic policy, that's where we are. It sucks. They are not for this big restructuring of the entire system, although I want them to be. I see Democrats arguing against stimulus checks, for example, where I'm from, and it's really unfortunate that there's Democrats like that, but it's what we're dealing with. So I don't see any other route right now for actual political power. If we're serious about passing progressive changes that will move our system, I see this as the route to do this. Like someone like Andrew Yang was really good at connecting to normie voters. I see a lot of people liked Andrew Yang. They didn't take him seriously,
Oh, yeah.
but they really liked Andrew Yang, and they love Bernie Sanders, and they love AOC. These people are enormously popular, and that within itself is really powerful for politics. If AOC is popular with progressives, with normie Democrats, with liberals, with civility obsessed, identity, like bad identity politic obsessed people. Like not like there's two types of identity politics, but the corporate identity politics obsessed people, the representation like in Biden's cabinet, like oh yes, female drum pilots or whatever, or a female pilot, whatever the
Here
meme
at
is.
Tandon.
Yeah, yeah, Neera Tanden. Yeah, those voters are. She has influence with those voters, and that is powerful. Although she isn't going to go and come out and be like, "I want to tear down capitalism on the, on the House floor," and like Nancy Pelosi is evil. I will force Medicare for all to a vote. That would literally hurt the chance of progressive policies
Yeah,
getting advanced.
yeah, and people that kind of do that, like Tulsi Gabbard, are like very unpopular with the Democratic base
Yeah, when she did that,
because she
yep, exactly. Her approval crashed to the least popular politician in the country, I think, after she did that to
really.
Kamala. It was like mutually assured destruction.
Wow. Really, I never knew that
Yeah, she has like a
like I said,
20% rating
I've been
now.
often I spent my time in the YouTube sphere when Tulsi Gabbard quote unquote owned and destroyed Kamala Harris's presidential chances. And I didn't
Yeah,
even know about that.
exactly. People thought that was amazing. And what they don't understand on Twitter is there's two big things. Just because you have one perception of reality doesn't mean other people's perception lines up with your own. So something that appeals to your emotion, something that appeals to your interest might not appeal to someone else's. We need to understand that. And also with me, if I'm saying we need to approach Medicare for All strategy in a different way, we need to approach progressive politics in a different way, in a more, in a more pragmatic way. That doesn't mean I'm against Medicare for All. That doesn't mean I'm against progressive policies. It means I want to take a step back and see how we can get real political power. But I guess, taking a step back and thinking a little bit isn't exactly a virtue of the left, but I want it to be.
Yeah, well, like I said, it's because a lot. I also think because like a lot of lefties are like really like pissed about what's going on, and they think that people agree with them because of the internet. But in reality, like when you talk to people, a lot of people are like very afraid. Oh, I don't want the government taking away my employer sponsored healthcare. Like, you know what I'm getting at?
Yeah, they already have healthcare, and they don't think the government can do things well. I don't blame them for thinking the government can't do things well, by the way. They don't think the government can do better. Why would they give up their current healthcare that they are comfortable with when, instead of going and doing this radical change that might help more people? I know Mike from PA said there are no real neoliberals in America. That is a laughable statement. There might not be people who see neoliberalism for what it is, but when it comes to like what that ideology appeals to, there's tons of people. That's all that matters is perception, how people perceive things, how people favor different things. And right now in America, the prominent ideology is neoliberalism, and we have to find a way to fix that. And I know people are talking about like why are Republicans winning nationally and on the state level if people really like neoliberalism that much? And we have to make sure we understand how our government is set up. The same reason third parties can't work. Our government is set in a certain way. The Electoral College guarantees even if a Democrat gets 10 million more popular votes, they might lose the actual election. And things like the Senate guarantee Republicans are going to have land power in middle America. So they're going to have more power in the Senate because that branch favors Republicans. It's how our government is set up. Neoliberalism is the prominent ideology. We need to be able to compete with that because the Democratic primary is what we need to win. So we need to understand those demographics.
How popular do you think conservatism is in the U.S.? Because like I said, if you pay attention to like YouTube or Kyle Klinsky, like they'll make it sound like that nobody's conservative, but like like our overall spectrum seems shifted for the right, and the overall opinion on masks is like to the right of other countries. Like, would you say it's still a dominant ideology or is it oversampled?
I think it's a really infatuating ideology. It's really easy to get people on board with conservatism because it's very simple and it's really privilege based. If you are already successful, why would you care about other ideologies? Why would you care other than if you feel bad about poor people or if you feel bad about black people in this country, like a lot of people from the suburbs who are Democratic are. Like they'll say, for example, a lot of Democratic voters that turn Biden will always say, yes, I support Black Lives Matter. Yes, I support a little bit higher taxes to help those people. But when it comes to a complete restructuring of our system and when it comes to actually paying up more and when it comes to having black people move into your communities, these liberal Democrats will turn right around on that ship, on that boat. They will turn right around really, really quick. So I don't think it can be overestimated. I also don't think people are too set in predetermined ideologies. I think it's relatively easy to get people on different ships. It's hard to break their current mental models, though. So, for example, I think we can sell our ideology without saying it's our ideology. I think we can literally sell what we want to portray without saying this is progressivism, this is socialism. We literally should keep it like this helps people. I don't care about my political labels. That's why I stopped calling myself a capitalist or a socialist, because I want to get down to literally what are we? What are we going to do for people? I don't want to compete with the already established views of these political labels, of these parties, of socialism, of capitalism. I want to like really get to the core of how to get voters directly. And if that means being a progressive and posing as, a person like AOC calling Pelosi Mama Bear, although I would cry in private after saying that publicly because it would be so cringy. Yeah, although I would say that you need to do it. I don't care about optics. I care more about making progress than I care about making a point. You know, I think that's a big
Yeah,
thing on the left. We care a lot about making a point and being like, haha, we're right, you're wrong. I don't care about that. I don't care about the
yeah,
theatrics. I want progress.
and that's another thing I want to talk about is I think the left is pretty faulty at optics, and there's definitely like room for improvement. Like the right, I think, is really good at it, and they know how to make punchy, quick-witted statements that are straight to the point. And whenever the left wants to do that, it backfires. For example, defund the police.
So defund the police. This is something it's really bad for politics, but it's really good for direct action. And I think people on the left also need to separate those two things as well, like inside and outside politics are a little bit different. Like the way you run a campaign, an activist campaign, should be and will be different than the way you run a real political campaign in which you're trying to get elected. Unless if you're someone like Cori Bush, who is running in a district where literally that community is like a epicenter for these issues, and defund the police is very, very, very popular in that area. Other than that, slogans like that are usually going to be for direct action, like we are demanding police be defunded in like New York City, for example. That's a big place that started, or like in general. This is a really specific thing. When it comes to like nationally, AOC talking about defund the police is directly going to hurt her political capital, and I don't think people really understand that. And AOC talking about using her popularity to talk about things like the Black Panthers in a positive light to a generation that doesn't know who they are is an amazing thing as well, and that is progress. The revolution happens in everybody's mind first, before anything can ever happen in person. And people like her, and I saw a post about the Young Turks. Someone on Twitter said, I usually consider the Young Turks lib shit, but they are helping get my parents more on the left. Of course, who cares?
That's what you want.
Yes, who cares if media agrees with you? I don't care about you. I don't care about myself. I don't care about what politics appear like to me. I don't matter. I'm already on board. We need to start being a movement of addition. No more subtraction, no more purity, only growth. And I think that's something we're missing out on right now.
Yes.
Yeah, so
There's something else.
you were talking about Kyle Kalinske a little bit in the emails.
Yeah, like throughout since I graduated high school to like recently, like he was like my main source of news. And there are many things, and I still love him. I still think he's contributed a lot for like the online left. But there's a lot of things I feel he oversimplifies that often, how do you say, that often backfire, such as election strategy.
Yeah,
Well, that mainly.
his election strategy is falling under that same, viewpoint. Like, hey, Twitter is real life. I don't think he thinks that directly, but it is excess off of his experience of life, and you have to disconnect your own experience from other people's and try to connect to them as well. That's the big issue he has. I still really like Kyle Kalinske. I think
Me
he's a
too.
great guy. I think he is doing his best 100%. He is a good faith actor. Jimmy Dore compared to Kyle Kalinske is nothing. Like, people are comparing Kalinske to Dore. I don't agree with that at all. Kyle Kalinske has done nothing to demonize anybody. He's only brought this up as a good faith discussion. I don't like the tweets he said about, an absolutist position, like if you don't support forced to vote, you aren't really for Medicare for all. I didn't like those tweets, but I'm pretty good with Kyle Kalinske, and I think there's a lot of hope that he comes back to a more pragmatic viewpoint into the future. But it's so hard. Your only conversations are with Dore, with Crystal Ball, with Brianna Joy Gray, with Justin Jackson. That's your entire Twitter feed. You don't talk to anybody who disagrees with you. He doesn't talk to anybody who's on a different side. So I think it's necessary for myself to talk to people who disagree with me on issues, to make sure my arguments are good, and to make sure I actually believe in what I believe in. And he doesn't seem to be having that test.
And yes, whatever I like in debates and whatnot, I would often kind of like use his talking points when like arguing with people, and like people would often like dismiss my arguments a lot of times.
Yeah, definitely. It's like,
And
yeah.
I don't mean to cut you off, but like when you say people you disagree with, like are there things you're like type of people you would not want to engage with? Like, do you think it's dangerous to engage with like certain like right wing characters or whatnot, should you do that?
I think my interactions with other people, even if I'm talking to somebody who can never be swayed, say I'm at a town hall type event, say I'm somewhere where there's about 10 people in the room, and there's one crazy person who will never be on my side. Never. It
Yeah.
matters how you interact with them, because the more you interact a certain way with people in general, the more you're going to you're going to repeat that approach. You need to respect everybody you're talking to get yourself on the right page with yourself on how to communicate, and also because there's other people watching that conversation. How you interact with other people is going to be, directly observed by other people that are outside of that current conversation. So I think every conversation is open. If you're in private with somebody, or if you're on Facebook and this obviously propaganda driven individual decides to attack you, I wouldn't say engage in that conversation, because there's
Okay.
no reason to put yourself through that mental turmoil. But in real life,
Yeah.
sure,
I
just
fell for it.
respond to them, stay as respectful as possible. Unless if they're really, really, really down the hole, they're being like bigots or whatever, then you have to obviously put a foot down. But yeah, I think your general conversations are going to echo further than that direct interaction.
Do you think David Pakman has a pretty good approach to that on how he asks very incisive questions, but he does so in a polite manner?
Yeah, he's a great interviewer. He does a very good role for progressives, like Warren does, for
I like
example.
David.
And I during the primary, of course, really mad at Warren. That whole primary season,
Oh yeah.
very mad. But she does something very important. We need a progressive like Warren. We need a progressive like Yang. We need a progressive, frankly, like Biden. We need to find somebody who can get different demographics. Bernie Sanders can't carry the entire movement on his back. We need people all over the place
He's the
that can get
gateway.
different demographics. Yeah, he is the gateway. He is obviously one of the most skilled politicians in American history. Um, but when it comes to like Warren and stuff, like I don't pick her as my politician of choice, but she is a choice politician for many people, and that is very valuable. I don't care if Medicare for all support comes from a person who is pure with Bernie, or a person who is more liberal with Warren, or a person who is a tech bro like Yang. I care that there's going to be support for progressivism and for progressive parties. We need people, well, progressive politicians and policies. We need people who are willing to critically think about the future of America and where we need to go. It doesn't matter how they get to that conclusion. We need people who are like willing to engage with us. And I don't think we're really concerned about that. I feel like the criticisms during the primary of purity politics that Pete and Warren's campaigns attacked Bernie with, I don't think they're completely unfounded. I actually think there's a big point that they made there that we missed out on the left, because we would rather blame everything. All of our failures, no matter what, is 100% corporations. All of our failures. It's all Obama. It's all the conspiracy. It's all CIA. We do nothing wrong. We are the perfect
Yeah.
we are the perfect people in politics. We are the only people who understand all of political theory and all of political strategy. We are the ones. We are the holy ones. That simply isn't the case. We do have to fight this big money influence at the same time as we're doing this. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't criticize us, ourselves, and our own. Criticize the people on our team and also ourselves and our role within that team. It's going to take a lot of self-evaluation for this stuff. And we can't keep on blaming other people for all of our failures, because we do a lot wrong.
Yes, we do. And I wanted to ask you.
Yeah, take your time. Doesn't
Yeah,
not in a
sorry, that was
rush.
my train of thought.
No, you're
Yeah,
good.
thank you, thank you.
In chat, Tyler, thank you. This level of pragmatism is what this space needs. Thank you. I will continue to try and do that. Um, by the way, thank you everybody who has been donating and joining Patreon and becoming a member. It's been helping me a lot with getting equipment to keep on streaming when I go back to school. I'm getting a new microphone that's actually good. But yeah, do you have another
Yeah,
point of conversation?
I found the thought. You there, Jolah?
Yeah, go on.
Yeah. So, do you think the worst element of the left, arguably, or those that are willing to side with like far right people because they're willing to because they're willing to give anti-corporate lip service, that think they're preferable to like corporate Democrats, like for example, like Jimmy Dore going on Tucker Carlson, but would not spend a day on CNN or MSNBC.
Yeah, so they are so anti-liberal. They need other people who are the same levels of anti-liberal to match their their level of anti-liberal, which is really unfortunate, and it makes them really
It is.
susceptible to populism in general. They're really populists above all else, so that's why they like Tucker Carlson. Like, oh my God, Tucker Carlson said corporations bad, love it. Like these people will side with Nazis in a lot of ways because
Yeah,
they
that's what I was
both
referring to.
say, yeah, they both say corporations bad, the elite bad, but they mean there's a Jewish world order controlled by George Soros, and we mean, there's power dynamics in society that need to be destroyed. So that's a big difference, but they don't understand that nuance. So it's really bad. I feel like a lot of people who supported Tulsi and who supported Bernie are going to vote for Josh Hawley when he runs for president in 2024 because they're going to fall for the populism. I'm 100% sure that's going to happen. Like, oh, this
Do you
guy's
think?
so pog. He supported the $2,000 checks. That's the only reason he's doing it because he's smart. Right wing populists throughout history have done this. They co-opted left ideas to get popular, and they used that same power they gained from it to destroy the left. But yeah.
Do you think? Would you say like Hitler did that too, or
Yeah, Hitler and Mussolini's platforms when they came to power looked a lot like Bernie Sanders's. If you look it up, it's all about workers' rights. It's all about people owning the means of, the fruits of their own labor and all that stuff. I think they
yes?
talked about giving healthcare. Like, I have to look it up again. But yeah, Mussolini was able to run as a communist, right? And then he transferred over to fascism after the ruling class tipped the scales on to because if society is going to be falling into a revolution, the ruling class always makes sure it happens on the far right because far right protects capital. The far left decommodifies everything. So yeah.
Yes. Have you ever participated in any Our Revolution meetings? Because I did one on this past Tuesday, and the main discussion was foreign policy. And one thing I tend to notice is that Republicans seem to be getting credit for being like anti-war nowadays since Trump has given anti-Iraq war lip service. Have you noticed the same thing?
Um. Yeah. If you watch a debate between like Destiny and Kim Iverson, they were debating
I've
Bernie
seen
or
that, yes.
bust. Kim Iverson would spend so much time defending everything Trump did. I debated somebody a long time ago on Bernie or bust. And they defended all of Trump's foreign policy stuff. There was a demilitarized zone in obviously in North Korea that Trump walked over where there's no combat at ever. And they gave him such good credit for that. Like Trump has broken boundaries with foreign policy, but then we find out behind the scenes, Trump has been pushing for conflicts with China and Iran this entire presidency. It's
Yes.
about it's about what position in history you are in. Like George Bush, for example, you can't say he's better than Trump or Trump's better than Bush because they weren't serving in the same time period. Do people really think Donald Trump would behave any better after 9/11? After that happened, starting conflicts overseas with after that attack happened, like it was with the Islamophobia in the country. Donald Trump is the person who literally said there were Muslims in the street cheering as the
I think he'd
planes
be
hit the towers.
worse.
Yeah, he'd probably be worse than Bush, but he never had the
Not to sound
chance
like
to be
a
worse.
web.
Evil leaders and authoritarian leaders are only going to be as bad as the power they can grab. So like our current government is really incrementalist. It's hard to do a lot of shit. The presidency is good for destroying, but it's not too good at radically changing anything. So Trump, for example, if he had the ability to, he would be dictator for life. If this government
Oh, yeah.
allowed him the power to do that, he would be that. I don't think George Bush would have been. In the same scenario. They respect the rules of the liberal game, liberalism, liberal democracy. They respect the rules.
Yeah, yeah.
You can still critique the current system, but don't pretend like these anti-liberty, pro-authoritarian, fascist politicians care about you just because they're willing to criticize the system too. Because they criticized the system because they know the system won't let them make their ethno state. We criticize the system, like I said, for actual reasons.
It's an agreement on problems, but like completely different solutions.
Yeah, if you
And
don't
I
agree
think
on
that's a problem
solutions.
that certain people on the left tend to fall for.
Yep, exactly. And
And it
yeah,
really bothers
that's Rising. The entire show Rising. They agree on problems, then they move on. They never agree on solutions. But if you look at Rising, you go throughout their page and how they cover regular news, and we know they're owned by far right megalords.
me.
Um,
The hell.
and yeah, the Hill in general. Um, It is a show that suits the far right, and it's really hard to tell people on the left that. I used to love Rising because I thought, like, oh my
Yeah.
god, they're so populist. They are bridging the gap between the far left and the far right and getting to the real issues America is facing. Then I watch it now, and like, Soccer will say something about like, we need to end China's regime. We need to end globalism and the world order. And Crystal will be like, yeah, you're right. Corporations are bad. I'm like, oh my god, that's not what he just said. You don't agree with him. You just think you do.
Do you like? I've heard Vosh say that she's a grifter. Do you believe that, or do you think she's just like naive?
I don't think she's a grifter. I just think she has a really bad way to approach politics in general. I think she's
Sure.
relatively a good person. I think all these people are pretty decent people. I just think they're extremely radical in the sense where they don't want to even comprehend or like compete with the reality of what's happening. Like Crystal Ball was making the same Tim Pool conspiracy lies about the COVID vaccine and about Fauci and about herd immunity. I covered it the one day. It's Yeah, she's making the same exact lies that Tim Pool does. They don't pay attention to media. Well, not media, but they don't pay attention to information. So, independent media, we talk about how they are not biased, but they are biased in a
They
different way.
are.
So, Crystal Ball versus
Everyone's biased.
MSNBC and CNN are 105,000,000% gonna cover COVID more accurately than Crystal Ball will because they are going to listen to literally the medical community when they're talking about these issues. They're not going to talk about politics in the, unbiased, of course. But when it comes to these issues, these really populist people have a bias that will turn them away from the general consensus, and that's why you'll see people on the far left and the far right both being very anti-intellectual, as well.
Yeah, did you see? I saw Jimmy Dore posted a video about him criticizing Fauci. Like it was a thumbnail. I didn't like watch it, but did you see that?
Yeah, and their timelines literally look like far right news commentators, and all their comments,
Yes,
they're not
it
convincing people to
was.
join progressivism. Like people watch them because they're happy they're also hitting on liberals. They're hurting
Yes,
liberals.
like
Like that's why people on the
he's.
right like them. They aren't converting people.
They say, you see, he's a liberal. He's telling the truth about you guys. Well, on the left, but he's telling the truth about the left.
Yeah, he's telling the truth. This is the real left. Wow, even somebody who is a progressive can criticize Democrats, just like Tim Pool. Wow, Tim Pool used to be a disaffected a liberal. Wow, he was a liberal, but now he hates Democrats because they're so crazy. Wow, that's just like Jimmy Dore. Democrats are corporate sellouts, and they're crazy. Wow, like it's reaffirming their already, set beliefs. Kyle
Your
Kalinske,
confirmation.
yeah, 100%. Kyle Kalinske is somebody who can actually get people converted, who can actually get people
Yeah,
from the right to the left, because he stands up for principles that are actually good, not just like being anti-liberal. He
I
is too anti-liberal at times, but he does fight for progressive values above all else.
I think he's the bridge between the TYT and David Pakman more liberal side of the independent of new media and the Jimmy Dore rising um crazy Nico House crazy side of the left. Would you say so?
Can you say that again, really quick? Sorry, I
That
was.
Kyle Quincy's like the bridge, yeah.
Oh yeah, the bridge
Is like the
between.
bridge.
Yeah, okay, yeah, yeah,
The,
sure.
yeah.
Yeah, sure. I'd agree with that. I want people to stop at Kalinske though when it comes to pragmatism, because if you go past Kalinske when it comes to political strategy, you're gonna go off the deep end a little bit. Um,
Yeah, I've
but yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, I definitely noticed that this election. He's like one thing, and I remember the 2018 midterms. He's like, well, it was about what's the guy's name in Indiana that lost that was a centrist. And he was like, well, Sherrod Brown's in Ohio, and he won a state over. And he had a more populist agenda. It was the guy I forgot what his name was, but he was like a centrist. Do you remember?
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly. Somebody said that Kyle. I don't think that this is real, but did Kyle replace Sagar for a show for one show on Rising?
No, that's the pod.
That's the
I never
podcast.
heard that. But
No, I
they're
haven't
probably
heard
talking about
that.
the podcast.
Yeah, they're probably talking about the podcast. Yeah.
Maybe they don't know about that.
Yeah, I
So
don't know exactly what
well,
you're
yeah,
referencing here, though. That example you brought up.
yeah, but I also think that's because Ohio and Indiana are different politically, not because one was more populous than the other.
Yeah, sure. Um, yeah, Crystal and Sagar are both on Rising today. Yeah, I don't know what you're talking about. Like, there's a video on here that's like if there's an issue where you can complain about both Democrats and Republicans, like for example the stimulus stuff, I feel like they find any way to blame Pelosi, even if McConnell is the core reason why nothing is getting done. Yeah, it's really interesting.
Do you think
Yeah.
do you think that's done as sort of a thing, like sort of like a thing to be like, hey, I don't poke the Democrat line, I think for myself type of thing, like psychologically?
Yeah, it's like I'm independent, so therefore I can't agree with anything Pelosi does, no matter what. So Pelosi will say the sky
Yeah.
is blue, and they'll be like, oh, "Really? The sky is blue? Who are you funded by?" Instead of being like, "Okay, this one thing is true." But I don't think we
Yeah.
get anywhere by lying about their positions because people can see through that. And if we're gonna be the party of legitimacy and populism, if we're going to be the party, well, not party, but if progressives are going to be the people who are about truth above all else and about calling shit out, we can't let that down just because it's something that might be agreeing with a establishment politician. That's not how life works. That's not how politics
No.
works. And I hate talking. I don't want to seem like I'm talking down to people, but it's simply like at this point, it's like you are being counterproductive to what we can be doing right now. And I see people who are forced to vote attacking DSA right now. And Jimmy Dore attacked DSA members for not caring about like the working class or whatever. And I'm pretty sure DSA's leadership is literally a bunch of working class people who don't turn any profit. And during the stream where Jimmy Dore called out the leaders, he literally made $15,000 in super chats and donations. And he hasn't even offered to give any of that up to the movement for Forced to Vote. He pocketed it, all of it. So it's a little bit of a double standard there.
For sure. And that's why I used to be a fan of him, but not so much no more.
Yeah, it's when you start literally just hurting progressives and like we're gonna come for you if you don't follow my plan because you don't really care about Medicare for all during a pandemic, and then they bring 5,000 people on screen to talk about their healthcare horror stories. Like we already agree with Medicare for all. These horror stories that you are trying to use to guilt progressives into making a bad decision, to make a bad move, you should be using these stories and organizing right now in your own communities to keep on moving public opinion for Medicare for all. But it's difficult because they already think the entire party agrees with them on Medicare for all, which is why I do these polling videos, which people are like, why do you care about the polling? Because if you don't understand where public opinion actually is, you're going to make stupid decisions.
Yes.
You're going to make stupid mistakes as well. And you're going to hurt the chances of Medicare for all passing in the future, which I cannot deal with right now because it is a serious crisis that we need to deal with. And if you're not going to put the time in to deal with this in a serious manner, then maybe sit back and let people who actually are willing to do that get a little bit of a, don't attack them at least. Don't attack them. Don't minimize what they're doing because you reject it. Like I'm not gonna I want them to be organizing. I think Brianna Joy Gray starting a Healthcare Now wing in DC is a good thing. That's what they should all be doing. That's what this entire movement should be about, and hopefully that's what they directed to. But
It's kind of like what Sam Cedar said about him. He's like, we both have the same idea. Like, do you want to go to Toronto? Like, my idea to get there is to take a plane. His idea to get there is to walk there.
yeah, it's really difficult too because if somebody comes up to you and screams at you with a really emotional argument, you're going to lose that rhetorical battle 100% because they don't want to be told. Yeah, they don't want to be told, like, we have to think a little bit, we have to take a step back and make sure we do something that can actually result in progress. They think, like, they would rather bad action than inaction. Or, like, they would rather, they want to do something that they can feel right now. They want to feel something. They want to do something. It doesn't really matter if it's calculated to them. And I don't blame them. It is an emotional way to look at politics. I don't blame them for having that desire. I have that desire. Like, I want to be able to be like, all right, AOC, go and pound your way through Congress, 5 to 500. You're going to beat them all. And, it's going to be a fairy tale ending. All of America is going to realize, oh my God, single payer healthcare is right. We have to vote for only progressives. That's going to, I wish that can happen. But, just the past half hour of our conversation talking about the real voter demographics of America, that simply isn't real. And I mean,
No.
things like this can be used to motivate people. To organize their own wings of like Healthcare Now, of different progressive organizing wings. In order for Force the Vote to work, to hold politicians accountable, you need real political power with different constituencies. You need to be able to hold politicians' feet to the fire by actually threatening their positions in office, and you can't do that if we don't have the proper organizing. We need enough organizing power to overpower the media influence and all that stuff. We're not there yet. And hopefully they can take all this energy about force the vote and change it into exactly that.
You always mention the polls having majority support, but rather soft support. Do you think sometimes the quality of the support is more meaningful than the quantity of the support? For example, Donald Trump doesn't have majority of the country on his side, but the support he gets is definitely it's really strong, and that's why I think he's why he's president, and he almost won this time.
Well, that's
You
why.
know what I mean?
Yeah, well, that's why. For example, Trump has so many GOP politicians on their knees for him right now. Like, oh, we're gonna defy the election results for you, Daddy Trump. Like, because the party support for Trump is so powerful. It's not like, oh, I somewhat like Trump. It's like, I freaking
It's not
love
even
Trump.
like
I love Trump. If
it,
you go against Trump, you're gonna lose your election. That's the power we need around progressive issues, from the bottom up, that we don't have yet. Like, if somebody says, yeah, I guess I somewhat like Medicare for all, that isn't going to be enough. That's not going to be enough,
yeah.
to hold these politicians' feet to the fire. We have such a battle to win yet. And that's what I said in my video. When Brianna Joy Gray says, literally, we already have all the voters on our side. We don't need to convince more. She literally says, we don't need to convince more voters. That is absolute lunacy. That is insane that she would say something like that. That's simply unreal that she was the national press secretary for Bernie Sanders, and she thinks the entire country agrees with our policies already. Literally they think a majority of Republicans are for single payer when that, no, don't take these things at face value. Look into them.
I was arguing with my friend's conservative dad, and I told him I was a Bernie supporter one. I'm like, one thing I like is universal health care. I think it's ridiculous the way we do it. And he was telling me, he's like, I get that, but I'm terrified of losing my union health care. And he said that over and over and over again. And a lot of people have that sentiment that I feel like that Brianna Joy Gray doesn't realize.
Yeah. When you live your entire life on Twitter, though, your perception is going to be a little bit distorted. And like talking to actual voters of other camps too. Like, say you campaign for Bernie, you canvass for Bernie, and you only organize with Bernie people. You might not get the same experience as if you actually talk to people who agree
No,
with other candidates. And on the left, even the people who are for like forced to vote and for Bernie or bust now are also the people I feel that say like, oh, Andrew Yang's not good enough. He's pretty disgusting. Elizabeth Warren, she should get out of our lives completely. Although we all have a pretty unfavorable view of like Warren. It's a little bit weird for me to see people who are like, they're so into saying to us, like you probably hear this all the time, don't treat politicians as your superheroes. Don't treat AOC like a superhero that can do everything. Don't protect AOC. Bernie Sanders, he's not your friend. We have to hold our politicians accountable. But in reality, these are the same people who literally put all of their hopes and ambitions in politicians. They literally put all of their hopes and ambitions in electoralism. What they're doing right now is screaming at politicians who are already elected, progressives who are already owning political power. They're screaming at them to act instead of looking at what they can do to act. It isn't really good action if you're just going to yell at other people who are already in power. And when Bernie Sanders loses the primary and your first reaction is to give up on politics altogether, maybe you shouldn't tell other people that they care about their politicians too much. Because I understand when I vote for somebody, I'm doing that as I need to do that. I'm voting to keep the system in a way that is good for us to still make arguments and to still organize as progressives. So when I'm voting for Joe Biden or even Bernie Sanders, I'm not expecting them to save the day. A Bernie Sanders presidency right now literally doesn't look that much different progress-wise than a Joe Biden presidency, other than there'd be someone actually fighting, of course. But it's much bigger than who's in office. And it's really funny that they'll be like to us, like, oh, don't protect these politicians, when in reality, their entire ideology is doing, is putting their hope in these politicians. It's bigger than that. It's going to take a wide movement.
Like say if Bernie was president, like I remember John Oliver was saying that his Medicare for all bill gives more than like anyone else in the world. But if he got into office, at best, he's probably just gonna get a public option, especially if the Republican Senate state would say the same. Would you agree with that?
Okay, say that again. Sorry, I was reading a chat.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. So John Oliver was talking about Medicare for all, and he was saying talk about Bernie's plan and how it gives more than like any other universal healthcare system in the world. But if he was president right now, he probably wouldn't get a fraction of that. He would probably get something like a public option.
Yeah, the presidency isn't good for building. If you're looking at the presidency to change our system or to make things better for people in America, then you're kind of ignoring how our government is actually structured.
Absolutely.
The executive branch is not how you make long-lasting policy. You have to literally uproot the House and the Senate in order to do anything whatsoever. I mean, I wouldn't even focus on the presidential elections. If we can keep a regular Dem in the presidency slot for another 8 years, I don't care that much. Because the work we need to do isn't going to be, against that president. That regular Dem president is going to have to be moved by a large public pressure movement and by the House and the Senate. We're not going to have these things do grow from the bottom. If we literally get every state house, every state senate, every school board, every city council, if we get the House of Reps, if we get the Senate filled with progressives, that is going to create a shockwave throughout America, a cultural and societal movement. That's what we need. A half-assed attempt at power grabs from the top of our already existing corrupt system isn't going to do much for long-lasting progressive change, and it's not really going to help people. We need to start literally at the bottom. We all need to be very smart in our approach as well.
Do you think the legislative branch has more influence than the executive branch?
Oh, 100%, yeah. When it comes
Okay.
to
Yeah,
actually getting
my
stuff
friend
done.
did the same thing too.
When it comes to rhetoric, the president is more of a... So there's two forms of leadership. The head of government in for example, like the UK or whatever would be the actual PM or something. The head of state
Yes.
is more of the symbolic leader, which would be like the queen and stuff in
The
that
queen.
system.
Yes.
In the US, the president is a combination of a head of state and a head of government. And there's some like semi-presidential systems and stuff like that. But the president is both a head of government and a head of state, so they are a big pillar of influence and a big when it comes to a big deal when it comes to they are the entire executive branch essentially. But they are more when their influence is tested. They are more throughout history about leading public opinion in certain ways and leading certain campaigns. And you can have like one policy or two that you run on that you have to push for. But yeah, real change doesn't happen with the presidency. You can blow stuff up through executive order. But other than that, there isn't much you can do. Like Obama's, all the stuff he got done got reversed instantly once Trump got in with DACA and everything.
Yeah.
They couldn't get anything passed through the House and the Senate, and even some very conservative measures we couldn't get passed. Like immigration, Obama's immigration plan is freaking center right,
Oh
and
yeah.
but
How about Obamacare? That's pretty right, man.
yeah, and
And
but yeah,
look at the Republican Party. It's struck it down like 45 times.
yeah, sure, yeah, definitely.
Do you let's say since we're gonna talk about a little bit like rewind the clock, do you think if Obama did had how do you say push for more progressive policies with the supermajority that he wouldn't have lost the would have lost the House and Senate in 2010, or you're not too sure about that?
All throughout history, a president typically loses seats in the House.
Yeah.
The first midterm election after they're elected, so I don't know if it would have changed much. I think Hillary would have won in 2016 if it was like that. To prevent, let's say, fascism in America, which is something I've been thinking about, we need, no matter what
Go
the
on.
ideology is, we need somebody, a politician who's going to be able to stand and be a powerful person and make demands. A lot of Americans, this is why so many people voted for Obama, then they voted for Trump. They don't really care that much what people stand for as much as the fact that they will be willing to stand for something. So no matter if it's a liberal or a progressive or whatever running against the next Josh Hawley or fascist presidential candidate, they need to be somebody making demands who's going to be a freaking fighter. Like John Ossoff right now is doing a pretty good job playing that role, being a debate bro, like asking for debates down there in Georgia and also really going at people. He said they asked him about the one Warnock issue, and he's like, Kelly, what's her name again? Loeffler. Yeah, Loeffler is campaigning with a Klansman. Like he is doing decent at doing that. But you need to be tough. You need to be able to stand up. You need to be able to stand to prevent something like that. It's really interesting.
Yeah. What else? Do you think that the left needs to know how to make punchier messages better than it does, or you think that it shouldn't? Because a lot of times, whenever I try to like explain policy, like long policies, I explain a lot, and that seems to be a huge thing in the left. When Reagan said himself, when you start explaining, you start losing. Like, do you think there's a way for the left to be more punchy, or you think that's not really possible because our policies have more nuance?
Well, Bernie Sanders did a good job on this. Green New Deal, Medicare for All. He was very, very to the point. One thing we have to do is make our message more appealing to the majority. So, for example,
Yes.
I was so mad at Bernie this primary. Whenever we bring up free college, it does not hurt anybody to simply say, I am for free college and also free trade schools and also free vocational schools. We need to fund more vocational schools so we have more handymen, so we have more plumbers, so we have more technicians, so we have more mechanics, so we have more people who are able to do welding. We need to fund vocational schools and colleges. We need to understand our demographics that we need is not simply only going to be college kids who are on Twitter. We need to expand this
Yes.
to the entire working class. If we're going to be the working class party, we can't be obsessed with eco-socialism and our core, like,
Yeah.
our LARPing that we do. It needs to be straight to the point. When we're talking about Medicare for all, you should bring up the argument almost right away. This is good for small business. There's no reason we shouldn't bring up all
Yes.
these things and steal
Yeah, I get
conservative
that.
talking points. We want more competition in the marketplace. We want workers to actually own what they work for, to actually own what they produce. We want workers to not be screwed over by private corporations. Like stuff like that can be really effective, but we need to be really concise in the way we do that. Bernie Sanders set the amazing outline. He set an amazing blueprint for what we should do in the future. Now it's time that we build on that and we, master the strategy he can do so well.
Yeah, and that's also pretty important too, to frame your progressive issues through a conservative lens. Like the Medicare for all one. One thing I always use is that it'll save businesses more money because they don't have to be paying health insurance to their employees.
Yeah, and also like even if you bring up the example like all right, so insurance is basically when we all combine our money and make like an emergency fund for if one of us gets sick.
Yes.
If we all put money into a hat and we all put $50 into there and we get into a crash, that's how insurance works. Like, one of us, hopefully we all don't get into a crash, but, we all pay for each other. Why are we letting private corporations who, if you ask anybody what they actually do, what these insurance companies do, if they serve a role, they'll probably say, no, I don't know what role they actually serve. Their only role is to reach into our pockets and take our money. And then when we need our money back, when we get hurt, they say, nope, you can't have it back. So they take our money and then set limits on when we can actually use our money. We need to bring it back to the community level so it's owned by the hardworking people of our society, not some people in fancy suits somewhere in Washington or fancy suits in Philadelphia or New York or Los Angeles making money off our backs. We need to bring it back to the local levels. We need to bring this all back to community and to hard work and to supporting our small business and our small people in our society. There's no reason we can't no reason we can't push that message.
Yeah, I had a question. Is that again? Well, it's actually interesting that you said that people don't know what their insurance company does, and they often associate their insurance company with their doctor. If especially like for example, like what Obama said about Obamacare. If you like your doctor, you can keep your doctor. If you like your healthcare, you can keep your healthcare.
Yeah, for sure. We need to bring that stuff up. You still have your individual choice. We're giving you more choice actually because you're not going to
You
be
just
limited. People understand out of network costs or like out of network services. You can't use your insurance out
Yeah.
of a certain freaking border within your state. That's terrible. That doesn't happen anywhere else. Like I always say for cancer fundraisers, if there's a cancer patient and they need money, for their treatment and they need to have a bit like I know people who have to have big like music events and stuff and sell tickets to raise money for a cancer benefit. That doesn't exist in any other country. No other country
No.
makes their people who get cancer embarrassed and makes them beg to actually get help. Other countries do that shit. Right now, we spent 14% of our GDP bailing out people during the pandemic. Germany spent 35% of their GDP helping people. Why is our government not helping people? And my favorite line of all time, well, not of all time, one of them, one of my favorites,
Yeah.
is ask what you can do for your country, but also demand what your government can do for you. And, we shouldn't be adverse to the already predetermined American cultural sets. We should learn how to adapt and build off of them.
Yeah, and I think that that's also one of the biggest problems too, especially that Americans are very hyper individualistic at large, and also tend to like fear the government.
Yeah, for sure. It's all about me, 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 me. My image,
Yes,
my self pride, my ownership, all that stuff. But we need to get people accustomed to the idea of collectivism and like, hey, if we come together to do this, we can do it better. People in conservative towns love the idea of community. They love the idea of supporting
really?
small business. They love the idea of people
That's
coming
right.
together, but they simply see it in a different way than we do. We have to be willing to adapt our message to meet them where they are and build off where they are instead of doing something that shocks their entire mental model so much that they become adverse to our ideas. We don't need to talk about socialism. We just need to stand up for whatever issue we can. Whenever there's somebody struggling, whenever there's a worker who doesn't make enough money, we need to be there and fighting for them, no matter what. We don't care if they are conservative or liberal or if they'll vote for us or not. That effect we leave is going to be good for us in the future for political power. Every time a progressive does something for others at a community level. Every time a progressive gets elected to a city council, every time a progressive is on a school board, every time a progressive serves their community well, that will make those people more open to progressive ideas into the future. That will make those people more likely to vote for a progressive when they run for president. This is going to be something that we do ourselves. We have to build this shit up before we take our big leap and make our big move to radically change this entire system. And that's, it is a long process, but if you don't first establish the foundation of progress, progress will never properly lay. And that's something we really need to pound in.
Do you also think that people should be more informed, should know more about local politics, and why do you think it's like people don't know much about it, including myself?
One second. So thank you for the $5 super chat, Spencer. When Breaking Bad was in the cultural zeitgeist, I used to point that no other country would bankrupt you over cancer. Yes, take contemporary ideas, take topics, take mainstream stuff, and just inject your input a little bit. Point it out. You don't got to yell at people. Like too many people on the left are often going to come out and tell and basically call voters stupid. If you don't
Guilty.
agree with these policies, oh, I hear this all the time. Oh, these people simply need to be educated. They have valid concerns too, and we need to, build off everything. We all have different backgrounds. We all have different ways of perceiving the world, and if we're really meant to create, a once in a lifetime progressive movement in the U.S. that has been unable to happen anywhere across the world, then we're gonna have to take these extra steps. But yeah.
Yes.
Um,
Worth it.
but that takes time. Young people are not disciplined or have any patient. They don't want to work towards universal health care. It'll take 10 years. They eventually give up. Yeah, that's true. Young people don't vote, and they don't care about actually working for it. They see things as and I'm young, obviously, so I know. But
Yeah, my mom, who's like kind of like the typical Democrat voter. She often says that used to tell me all the time, the Democrats don't run for the left because the people that are further left usually tend not to vote.
yeah, exactly. If Joe Biden would have went more left, he would have lost votes. Like there aren't. This is a big misunderstanding of political power. I saw during the primary as well. Like, Joe Biden should go more left and he'll win the election. Like, no, there's no more voters to get by going left. He literally won the election because he was appealing to voters in the suburbs. Like, he appealed to the most moderate, civility-obsessed people, the most liberal voters in the world to beat Trump. That's how he beat Trump. If he would have went more left, dude, like, 300,000 people voted for the Green Party in an election where there were 15% more votes than ever before. Like there isn't some underlying big voter base of progressivism out there that simply hasn't been educated yet. These people are in politics right now, and we need to play that game. And we need, well, not play the game obviously, but we need to approach it as it is, not lie to ourselves about it. Yeah, thanks for these good. These are really good questions, by the way. I'll probably
Oh,
be able to
thank
make
you,
like
thank you.
I'll probably be able to make a couple of videos out of this actually. Yeah,
Oh,
these are
thank
really
you.
good.
I'm very glad you, for you taking the time for me, especially dealing with my technical difficulties and all that. And watching your streams, it sounds like you have really good input. And I always want to ask you these things.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Um,
Oh, yeah.
it's always good to have people who are asking really, really good questions because usually people will ask me something like for example, like on the force to vote stuff, they'll ask me some stupid thing like, "When is the right time to push Medicare for all?" Instead of like, "Okay, how are we going to get to a point where progressivism can actually happen in America?" Like this isn't going to be absolutes. Like there's no direct answer. It's not a light switch.
No,
It's not a video
no,
game. Like,
definitely not.
oh, which are we gonna use? Oh, we're using what's my favorite Pokemon of all time? Infernape from Pokemon Pearl. Are we gonna use flamethrower or are we gonna use what's that one called? Oh, I'm bringing up my nerd
I
stuff.
don't know much about Pokemon.
Oh, he had this other movie. It was Flamethrower.
I used to
Um,
play it when I was a kid, but not really much no
yeah, I
more.
haven't played it in a long time either, but it's not like we're picking which Pokemon move to use. Progress has to be constant, but yeah.
It's it's actually Michael Brooks brought up about voting that the people were kind of describing. Think of voting as a fantasy football draft, and and that's not what it is at all.
Yeah, exactly. The
I don't know if you heard him say that,
close
but
combat, yeah,
he's
that's
I
a good
think
one.
he's good.
So Cloud, citing Green Party numbers, not sure that makes too much sense. I think it does because people were talking about how Joe Biden should appeal to more Green Party voters when there were only 300,000. Last election they got 1.6 million votes. They got 1.3 million less votes this election after how much extra votes were cast? I think like 20 million extra votes were cast this election, and somehow they got 1.3 million less votes. That doesn't even make any sense. Yeah, but
I don't,
it just shows general like are there voters out there for us to get that didn't come out because Joe Biden was so crappy he wasn't left enough? Probably not.
can I play devil's advocate?
Yeah, sure.
Do you think that people that certain Biden voters would agree more with the Green Party, but on policy, but view them as like a not a viable option?
Oh yeah. One second. I'll answer that in a second. Thank you for the $10, Nighthawk. How do you get more young people? How do you get more young people to get involved? They don't vote. Bernie Sanders had one of the most, he had one of the largest efforts to ever get young people out to vote in American history, and he was unable to do it. It's a voter base that isn't going to be that consistent. We just need to wait and wait and wait until another generation goes by, basically. The next generation coming up is very conservative, or not conservative. I don't know why I said that. It's very progressive in general. So we need to keep waiting until really old people keep dying off, and we also need to keep on making arguments that can convince the already existing voter bases, because young people are not going to come out in a big enough way to actually be very, very big in this election or in this current landscape. Yeah, mask off. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm putting on my conservative ploy for everybody. Sorry. Your question was about
About if Green Party, if Biden voters would have agree more with the Green Party, but they vote for Biden because he's the more viable option.
I'm sure a
Or
couple. I would guess that'd be around 5% of the votes Bernie Sanders got in the primary would be like that. So around a couple million people, I'm sure, voted for Biden that would agree with the Green Party more. They're literally eco-socialists. Calling themselves that word alone means they're not politically viable in any part of the country other than like the most blue part of California or Washington. Like that's
even
just
then, the terms
like how did
because a
they
lot of
they
like
made it
I'm sorry,
scarier. They made the
yeah,
term
and
socialism scarier somehow.
yeah, because I hate to say it, not to be cynical, but a lot of people in like even in California are like very high income and don't or and are afraid of socialism because they're afraid of taking a pay cut or pay higher taxes.
Yeah,
Even
yeah,
like
they don't want to pay higher taxes.
super blue people,
They
and like
love it,
super
dude.
wealthy.
They love standing up for these issues until they have to pay more in taxes.
Yes, yes.
Wait, he would not go left to get green, but to excite voters. I mean, I thought that too, but the numbers simply aren't there. To prove that theory, correct. When it comes to people on the left, they came out for Biden. He won based off suburban votes. It was a good calculation he made. He won the suburbs. Trump was so mad at him. Like, why am I losing the suburbs? Trump didn't even understand it. But yeah.
What type of community do you live in? Because it's Republican. Is it a suburb or it's a rural area?
No, freaking farms and coal mines
Oh,
and
okay.
iron and steel, steel towns. Let's see, oil. Yeah. So
Okay, that's pretty rural. Because in my I'm actually I'm from your neighbor state of New Jersey. Um, my county is blue, and I live in suburbia. My county is blue, but the next suburban county south of me is like 53% Republican because they're higher income.
yeah, yeah, higher income. Um, there is a weird relationship between that. So if you're higher income and you have a good college degree, you're more likely to be liberal. But if you are higher income and you're more like a business type, then you're going to be a lot more conservative.
Yeah,
Um,
I know.
yeah. But in general, yeah, that is what seems to be happening in general. But Joe Biden got a lot of those voters over. Like it's kind of
Also,
weird how he got so many of those moderate Republicans. Like the Lincoln Project did
like a
nothing,
project.
but the concept of the Lincoln Project was completely real in the electorate. Although the Lincoln Project is a piece of garbage that didn't do anything for anybody.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're a bunch of never Trumpers.
Yeah, they're a bunch and they're
And also,
grifters too. Like
counties that in my state that went for Trump were usually rural counties, higher income, like business counties and retirement counties as well. That went for him.
retirement counties, yeah, all the old people who want to. It's funny though, because we have to understand these people went to high school during freaking segregation, so their ideas are going to be
Absolutely.
a little bit old fashioned, as they would say back in the day, as they would say.
Speaking of that, um, my friend once told me, like you were talking about, like people people a certain population to die off, and my mom, who's baby boomer, thought a lot of her right wing peers would die off, but it hasn't. And my friend also said that people may die off, the leaders of ideologies may die off, but the ideologies themselves usually last.
Yeah, we have to look at that as well throughout history. The people who owned slaves became the people who were pro Jim Crow and pro segregation, and the same people who were pro Jim Crow and pro segregation also were pro um, war on drugs, and those same people are now also anti BLM. So progress does happen over time, but these ideas never die. Or I just had a double negative, but they never die. Only one never. I said never, never. But yeah, they don't die. In the South right now, if it was socially acceptable to have a KKK wing, there'd be public wings, like very public KKK organizations in the South right now. These people in these states, like in Kentucky. Kentucky has 10 of the poorest counties in the entire country. Yeah, these people are living back in the 50s still.
Oh, for sure. And have you heard the term presentism before?
No.
Okay, well, it's pretty much like seeing like it's sort of like a bias, like looking at things in like the past. Like that you might feel like you might be like a reactionary right now, but you might like look back at like what went on back then and be like, oh, I respect like Martin Luther King, but I hate BLM. Like, do you know
Yeah,
which type I'm talking
exactly.
about?
They
But I
don't
really see that
understand.
really,
They don't get the concept that if they were around in that time, they would have been 100% against MLK. They just
yeah,
don't understand it. They were beaten to this position, but they don't even know it.
my friend's father, he's a big Trump supporter, but he also loves Martin Luther King Jr. And same with WWE CEO Vince McMahon.
Well, he probably thinks that MLK. They always bring up the quote, "Oh, MLK didn't see people for the color of their skin."
Oh
When they
yeah,
say like, "Oh, I don't see color," when that isn't what that means. Like it's really funny how they
no.
use like PragerU is sharing MLK quotes.
Oh, great. Did you see that one video they posted recently of the white nationalist video?
The pro slavery one. They
Yes.
took it down, by the way. They got a lot of
Really?
they got
Yo,
some backlash for it for some reason. I don't know why.
I'm
I
wondering,
don't understand it personally, but
I'm wondering if like the person, well, like I say, the dislike ratio, probably what did it, and it took the mask off, and they didn't want that.
yeah, they don't want to have videos on there that are too edgy, or people would understand maybe that they're like a neo-Nazi
Um,
organization.
I'm wondering if that was like if that guy was a legitimate Nazi, or if he was kind of like one of us that tried to like expose them for like being like far right. If you know what I'm
Well,
talking about.
yeah, I don't know, but in terms of like being a Nazi or not, um, it's really about if you call yourself one, isn't it? Because you can agree with them on 100% everything. Like, if you come up with a very clean way to present the same arguments, you basically are. It's all about how you make the
Yeah.
arguments. Like, if Josh Hawley comes up and starts talking about an ethno state, which he's gonna, um,
Oh, right.
that is
Yeah.
that much different from somebody literally just saying we hate black people and we think whites are superior? Is that much different, or is it
It's
just a
the
different
dog whistle.
presentation? Yeah, it's just
It's the art of the dog whistle.
it's how they wrap it and how they present it. Yep.
Oh, for sure.
Radical
And
abolitionist John Brown. Yep. Yeah, so it's pretty cool.
Speaking of this whole thing, do you think there's sort of a correlation between people who are white supremacists and people who like small government?
Is there a difference between those two?
A correlation. A
Oh,
correlation.
a correlation between that.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they like bigger government when it comes to keeping minorities down. Usually, it depends who I'm talking to, though. Because a
Right.
libertarian, is going to be someone who is anti all government and they're pro socially being acceptable. That would be someone who accepts things. But usually, people who are like I'm pro small government, they usually are going to say like, you know what, we should enact the Insurrection Act to go and invade Chicago right now and take it under military takeover. Like these are the same people who will make both arguments. So yeah, there is a correlation.
Like people, yeah, like people who could consider themselves libertarian, like since like the Trump era, tend to like how do you say tend to be less socially accepting than than like a while ago. Like it's always been a thing, but like look at like all of, like these far right people that consider themselves libertarians or once considered themselves use that label.
Ooh, wait, someone said something cool in chat.
Or the,
As an evil
or
centrist that leans very slightly right, I'm going to make this easy. I don't care enough about y'all, and I'm not fortunate. I'm not so fortunate that I'm going to put me and my family's interests second. So it's not a zero sum game, of course, and you have to look at the power dynamics in America. So the people who own all the money right now are making things really shitty for the people at the bottom. If you want your family to be safe, you do not want all money and all power held by a corporate state. You don't want all money and all power held by Jeff Bezos. You don't want all that money and all the power of the military owned by these same people. And at the same time, you want to force your government to take care of people. So I'm sure you're very concerned about riots. If you don't want riots to happen, then you should care about the government being better for all people. If you're really concerned about your own family's safety, then you need to defend liberty at every position, economically and socially, no matter what, if you're really concerned about it. Individualism has never worked all throughout history. If
no.
your idea is, I'm going to protect my family and not care about anyone else, it's going to come around to bite you 100%. But yeah,
And unfortunately, the people that are about that whole thing usually listen to talk radio and hear about the Democrat-run cities time after time after time, and it literally gives me a brain aneurysm every time I hear it.
yeah, it's like, oh, we let 5 million, we let half the country fall into poverty, and if they don't rob a store, they're gonna die. Why are they rioting? I don't understand it. Or wait, Jeff Bezos owns
Uh,
more than 300 million Americans combined. I don't see a problem with that. He just worked for it. Like that,
he worked
that's
for it.
not gonna
Oh
work.
my
But
god! Oh my god! Yeah, it's it's how do you say? I think it's American society and media glorifying extreme wealth and the captive industry that give people this whole thing like a lot of like how do you say like poor like Republicans, I'm sure where you live, either think they're gonna become a multimillionaire or they'll say, well, I made a lot of mistakes when I was 25 and that's why I'm not rich. Like I'm sure you hear that like all the time where you are.
oh yeah, for sure. And these people tend to think that yeah, they do think they're gonna be successful, and if they're not successful, then they literally think like, okay, I messed up somewhere. I messed up big time, and I'm not gonna hurt the people who are at the top because they worked for it. And it is based off of this ideology that stems back to the root of if you read like the doctrine of fascism and like in Germany where it comes to it's Protestant work ethic, but it's also like working is freedom or work sets you free. These people have this idea that you need to
Oh
be
yeah.
that your wealth is gonna contribute or you're gonna get back from society what you put in through work. And if they didn't get back from society enough, then they didn't work hard enough or whatever. Like they're really quick to be like put down by the system and accept it, you know? Oh, thank you for the donation. What the hell is that? 59? Where's that from?
How
One
would you
second.
make?
Wait, 59 Swede. You're from Sweden. Swedish krona. You're sending me Corona? Swedish Corona. Thank you for wait, thank you for the 8 point wait, let me do this.
It's
59.
ironic.
Thank you for the 7.13 American dollars.
How
Yeah.
much? It's ironic because Sweden did not handle Corona well at all.
Yeah, it's funny. Yeah, shout out to Sweden, dude. People are happy there at least. They're happy in all the
Oh
Nordic
yeah, well,
countries.
universal healthcare, universal education, right to a union. I don't see a correlation there.
Well, I think their culture is really loose too, right? Really like really what's it called? They're not too strict or like fundamentalist in anything, it doesn't seem.
I think those two go together usually.
Adam says if the issue negatively affects my passion or my wallet, I'm voting against it. Hey, I would ask you to please consider calling in sometime. Not today, but if you want to do it like Sunday or something, call in sometime and we can talk about that exact issue about pocketbooks and money and all that stuff. Because right now in America,
They're just
if workers are only owning, I have to look it up, but say you're working a shitty job right now, and you're only getting a small percentage of what labor you actually produce or what value you actually produce, these policies can get you more of the value you produce. And also, not only can you make more money if we fight for workers' rights, but also, and I'm not, and you might be for that, but also, if more money goes into education where you're from, or parks and concrete and infrastructure where you're from, that value is going to move all through society and create a standard of living that people are going to want to uphold. So there's a social fabric argument. There's a lot of arguments, but yeah.
why do you, speaking of all that, why do you think so many people here vote against their interests?
Propaganda. Yeah, propaganda. They're really, really manipulated 100%. Against their own interest. So for like Donald Trump, a lot of it is class war, and race war stuff. Like they'll stand up for the rich people, and they'll also be very scared of the immigrants. So it's that classic meme. Somebody who
You
owns
think
the entire country is going to say to a poor white guy, "Hey, white guy, look, those brown people are taking your jobs. You want to go beat the shit out of them,
yeah,
And the poor white guy will always, poor
yeah,
people are going to operate more off of anger and off of emotion because it is true. If you're not having access to diversity and better education, you're not going to be as good of a critical thinker in many instances.
actually not.
Although people who are poor are very smart and very skilled in many things, they don't really know their own worth. And that's part of what I do. I try to get people to know their own worth in this society. And being insecure, being exploited also leads you to more racist outcomes. And we see this with incel culture and how that leads to the far right pipeline. These really insecure white males who are put down by the system. And they are insecure partly because of the economic circumstances. Like we were just talking about, how people feel like if they're unsuccessful, it's their fault. That also
Yes,
leads them to these insecure ideologies and going to these rabbit holes as well. So yeah, teaching them their own worth first will help them. Okay, teaching people the way systems affect them will make them more likely to see how these systems realistically affect other people. So if we bring up systemic racism, they'll be more likely. This I don't know if there's any science backing this, by the way. I might be stupid, but
okay.
if they can see systems in general at all, if they can understand a systemic understanding, because conservatives are more likely than liberals to look at things at an individualistic level. They don't really
I
look
was
at how
gonna
systems
mention that.
affect people in general, and that is a fact with psychology and all that shit. But that's why they hate sociology. They don't understand it. But if we can get them to see how they are affected by systems realistically, not by a global. See, that's the thing too with Rising. Crystal Ball and Sagar agree corporations are bad. Crystal is talking about, but doesn't advocate for, structural systemic changes because systems affect people. But Sagar is appealing to the same things that gets these poor whites on board. You know, there's a big global conspiracy of Jewish people and brown people who want to take you over, and Marxists that want to take you over, all this culture war bullshit. We need to get people thinking systemically. And when I say we need to make sure they understand how systems affect them, I don't mean, you know, the all the conspiracy stuff, but...
No. Has Sagar ever pushed for JQ? Like, I never heard him say it.
No, but he does all the China stuff and talks about globalism over all else, and that's usually a dog. I mean, it's not always a dog whistle, but if your big concern is usually if your big concern is globalism and isolationism, that gives a little bit of a clue to what audience you are, especially when you ignore other systemic causes. Like if you literally only blame everything on like a world order or like globalism and freaking Twitter censorship and and the big power, the power hierarchy of social media corporations favoring only Marxist ideas or whatever. Like you're saying everything except you know, that basically.
And the other thing you've been saying about Sagar with the globalism thing, like he's a pretty big protectionist from what I understand. And
yeah,
do you think that's something that's like that both like where like far like certain left and right wing people agree on problems but have a different motive behind it? Like Bernie's a protectionist, right?
Yeah, he is a protectionist. It is different, yeah. It is different in the way they approach it. And when Bernie talks about protectionism, see, this is hard too though. Because Bernie used to use the same exact immigration arguments that the far right uses right now. Like, literally 2010 or 8, you can see Bernie saying that we need to stop immigration because it hurts American workers. So, that is a populist thing above all else. I guess we can judge it. Okay, so there's the outcomes of what Bernie says, and there's where he would take it. I think there's different things when it comes to that. And if you agree with Bernie Sanders and actually would vote for him based off that message, you probably agree with his other progressive ideals. So I guess it is pretty different, but the message is pretty misled. When it comes to the economics of immigration, Bernie doesn't seem to understand that as much, but he's been his entire life a principled populist. It actually seems like he himself went from being Bernie or bust to being who he is now within the last 20 years or like within the last 15 years. It seems like he went from, you know, he's always been a pretty pragmatic person, but it seems like he really learned how to get this shit done like recently. Like I know he was 60 at that point. Yeah, after he understands political power now. Yeah, and he's really trying to wage it in a way that can actually create change. He isn't just an edgy outsider anymore. So he undertook the same transition that everybody else needs to do, in my opinion.
And that's why edgy edgelord outsider types like Jimmy Dore don't like him anymore because he knew the system. They'd rather support contrarians like Tulsi Gabbard that are just gonna that are just gonna like, you know, destroy the left and yet enable the right.
Yeah. They want the emotion. They want to be able to feel good about it.
They want to feel. Hang on. They want to feel that the worst people are the ones in your party rather than the ones than the ones at the other party, and you have to clean up your party first, which is absolutely wrong. But that's what I believe they think.
Yeah, and they don't really like the concept, which is true, that if you eliminate political power for the right, if you give political power to centrists, then you can make arguments on why they misuse their power.
Yeah.
If Democrats don't have the Senate, for example, it's going to hurt progressivism because, now they can literally just say Biden's entire presidency, we couldn't get it done because of the Senate. We couldn't do it, sorry. Or like when Trump was president, sorry, we couldn't get it done because Trump was president. It's a shield they hide behind. Giving the Democrats power, taking power away from Republicans directly helps progressivism take root.
Of course.
Yeah, so.
And you also hear like, oh, the neoliberals are worse because they seem to be the ones blocking it, the ones that block progress more, which I don't think is true.
Yeah, you need them doing it.
They do to an extent. They need to do it.
This is a perfect example. So, a big bargaining chip for Democrats with the $2,000 checks was the defense funding authorization. And people are complaining on Twitter about how the Democrats... how the Democrats Um, only five, like Bernie, Warren, and like Markey and stuff like that. Merkel, yeah, they voted against it, and I think like 87 total senators voted to pass the defense authorization bill or whatever. And they were saying how this is basically a vote against $2,000 checks because it throws away political power for the future that would force Republicans to support the 2K checks, right? That's the argument they made. So if you voted
I
for
don't know
this,
exactly.
yeah, so
Yeah, I've
if
heard
you
this.
voted for passing this defense funding, then you voted against passing $2,000 checks. And that's what progressives understand. That's what people who are in politics understand. But to regular people, they didn't see that as Democrats throwing away political power. We need to make it very explicit when Democrats fumble. So they need to be directly voting yes or no on something directly. Like when it comes to like $2,000 checks, I wish Democrats were in charge of the executive, of the legislature, and also of the Senate. Like if they had those three things, oh my God, it would be so great to pressure Democrats on that issue because they would have to do it. But right now they can hide behind Republicans like usual. I don't want them to be able to
That's
hide behind anybody.
that's what they've been doing for 6 years under after Obama lost the House and the Senate.
Yeah, we have to take away their invisible cloaks that they get to use.
Do you think how you say? Here's our question: why do you think Trump beat Hillary in 2016? Like, do you agree with Kyle on that? Because I do, and at the same time, I don't. If that makes sense.
A combination of white nationalist populism, economic populism, and Hillary being the worst candidate of all time. It's
Yeah,
the very targeted areas where she beat Trump. Like he didn't do better than her in debates or anything. It was literally because of the electoral college and how states are made up. Hillary being a male might have actually helped her too, because being a woman actually played into the power dynamics that helped Donald Trump. Being a female is really bad for perception. Like Biden wasn't a better debater than Hillary. Holy shit! But Biden looks better because Biden's a
Biden's
man.
much.
I would agree with that.
It is more likable.
Thank you for the donation. More. Here, let me calculate this. more.
Sure. Go ahead,
More
go ahead, go ahead.
Swedish. Thank you for the $14.39. 119 Swedish coronaviruses. You have libertarians a bit wrong. I think they are for small states generally, but they want a strong core which will protect their rights. Do you mean libertarians in the sense of left libertarians or the Libertarian Party? I would agree with you. Most libertarians want a strong core, but I was referring to the Libertarian Party. So like the current leadership and also the majority of that party is basically ANCAP in many regards. I don't know if you saw the interview I did with like Joe Jorgensen and with Spike Cohen a long time ago. So that's basically
I
what I was
did not
saying.
see that.
I agree with you though. Like Vermin Supreme, for example, I want to have him on again. That'd be fun. I had him on in this summer before I actually had any people like actually watching. I think it'd be fun to actually have a chat during it though. So if you want to watch that interview, he's an example of a libertarian that really gets it. Yeah, I love Vermin Supreme.
So what I was saying, I actually my old school had an essay on why Trump won, and like a couple of years ago, and I was saying that it was definitely more of the populist thing that he was saying about like bringing the jobs back and then the wars, and now I think that was how we got people to cross over to him that were Democrat, not in how we fired up his base. Like if it was the prime and how we won the primary, I'd say the wall, I'd say the xenophobia and all that.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah,
100,
but when it
100%.
comes to the presidency, like Democrats and Republicans have voted.
Well,
So like there could be people that were like
yeah, and
Democrat, like in your state.
he drove out poor white people too, which are really conservative voters. Which he was able to do that very well. But he is also a strong man, and
Oh, 100%.
there's a lot of literature on that. Very
Yeah.
right wing ideologies favor people who are very authoritarian, who are very what's it called? Republican voters are pretty submissive.
Yeah.
They
It's
want to
like an
be
abusive
they
relationship.
want to lick some boots, all right? There's a lot of
It's
times where
like
they want to sit down and lick some boots, and they want a strong leader that they can fanboy over and donate to. It's really cute, actually.
it's like they're in an abusive relationship.
Yeah, I mean, maybe. But, like Trump, like there's people literally making portraits of him naked with a beefy body with like biceps and abs and
Yeah, what's
stuff.
that
Like
guy's name?
you might have
Garrett.
to check your if you're really homophobic after posting something like that. Like a lot of these people don't understand that it's weird how much they worship him, the cult of personality. But I mean, throughout history,
Yeah,
this has repeated. The same ideology falls, and I can't even say that ideology. The left does this stuff too. Like the
true.
left
Yeah,
falls for strong leaders and authoritarianism when it gets to the extremes. I think the right extreme is easier to reach though than the left extreme. But throughout history, like you can't. I don't know how you feel about this argument, but you can't blame Trump on capitalism and not blame like Stalin on socialism because they're both people who are using that system to get authoritarian power. Like it's obviously, and people will say, corporatism isn't capitalism, and market capitalism isn't socialism, or not market capitalism, state
market
capitalism.
socialism.
Yeah, market socialism or state capitalism isn't real socialism. But I don't know about that. But
I think it's definitely a lot of semantics when it comes to that. Like I when it comes to that, and that brings me to another thing I've noticed. People that are like on the left tend to over exaggerate how left wing they are, but people on the right tend to pretend to be more moderate. You notice that?
yeah, on the left, they often look like LARPers a little
Like,
bit. Like, I am the
yeah,
socialist, I am progressive, I wear that on my sleeve. But I mean,
like
it's
here's an example. Like the squad, they call themselves democratic socialists, like radical democratic
but the
socialists.
thing is
When
though,
they're really when there's really just one of the social democrats that exist in every other developed country.
far right positions might just be more American because um crap, yeah, far right positions might be more American just in general than like a far left position would be. This country is leaning right all throughout history when
It's
it comes to the
it's
global stage.
it's our political spectrum is definitely more stunted to the right than like even our neighbors up north.
Yeah, definitely, yeah.
Would you say so? Yeah.
Yeah, Canada is leagues ahead of us when it comes to They passed $2,000 a month in like 3 days when COVID started.
Yeah.
Like, come on. Thank you for the $10 again, Nighthawk. Thank you a lot. These conversations have been very entertaining. Appreciate the content. Thank you a lot. I enjoy these conversations very well. As well. Yeah. So, any like final things you want to ask me by chance? Any like anything else?
Um, right now, no. I definitely appreciate you having me come on and everything like that, and I definitely love to call in sometime again and do this again because this is definitely very productive. And hopefully, you have the same experience as I did.
Yeah, definitely. Expect to see these up on my channel in different segments. I don't think I'm gonna post the entire like 1 hour and a half conversation, but I'll
Yeah,
be able to
go
get
ahead.
some
That's
good.
cool with me, man.
Yeah, I'm gonna exploit your labor of asking me questions.
It's fine. It's no. This is what I wanted to do for a long ever since I started watching you. I'm like, man,
Yeah,
I really want to hear takes on these.
yeah. If you have other stuff, email me again. And then I'll
I'd love to.
have you on again. Yeah, sure.
Thank you.
Like at
I'd
this
love to come
level, I'm
back.
basically getting like per week. I'm getting about 15 emails to talk, so it's not bad at all. So I could talk to basically anybody that wants to, which
As
is
long
cool.
as you can manage it.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. All right, have a good rest of your
All right,
night.
have a good night, man. Thank you.
Oh yes, I love some good good dialogue. Good discourse. If you are not here, or if you are here, if you're not here, if you are somewhat here, and you did not like the post, like the stream, or subscribe to my channel, please consider doing so. Thank you, Nighthawk and Lucas and and Spencer for the donations, obviously. Oh boy, there's 3 people waiting in the call-in lobby. Yeah, so you guys, this is going towards microphones and not a camera. I'm not gonna buy a camera yet, but I'm getting a microphone, which should sound better for you guys. I don't like this thing. I hate this. I hate this. I don't like it. Look at it. I don't know how to use it right, which is part of the problem. But this is like broken too. I have to like mess with it all the time to get it to actually work. I have it on like a broken like mic stand or whatever. Okay, there's 3 people waiting to talk. I don't know. All right. if you want to come in, who's here? Is someone in chat right now that wants to come in? There's 3 people waiting in the lobby. Should I bring them all in at once? Is that smart? I'm pretty sure they've all been here before. Pretty sure. Do a panel. Okay, I'm gonna drag all 3 in. Let me go in. Let me see this. 1, 2, 3. All right, I dragged 3 people in.
All right, what's up, Joe? Happy New Year.
Happy New
All right,
Year,
Happy New Year.
everybody. How are y'all doing?
Doing pretty good. How are you?
I'm ready for part 2 of 2020. Oh, thank you again for the donation, Spencer. Don't let Republicans win on certain framing like personal responsibility. Yeah, personal responsibility should be a left thing as well. Like, why not? Why can't we just say, you know what? You know what? We are the real people who care about competition and personal responsibility. These people at the top who keep on breaking our economy, they should be held accountable. They're the people who should be held for personal responsibility. We're out here at the bottom. We're here at the bottom working our asses off so they can be up there doing nothing. They're doing bullshit up there. We need to take it. We need to enter. We need to have a communist revolution. Don't say communist revolution, but you know.
I mean, hey, it just sounds like the super capitalism framing, you know? We love
I
that.
love, dude, super capitalism is my favorite. I haven't ever called it super capitalism, but I've been thinking about that concept forever. Like, if you talk about meritocracy or like real competition, that is literally a Marx thing. That's literally a socialist thing when it comes to like hard work. It was never about equality of outcome. It was always about equality of opportunity. And that is real competition when it comes to like, I don't know if any of you ever saw the study on sports and how sports make people more they like capitalism more because they think sports shows them like the world is more about competition. If you work harder, you're going to be successful. Although we know in sports that's not true. You are more physically, naturally better, and also, you know, if you have a better home life, you might be better at sports as well. But it's the same
And if
concept.
you're 5 foot, you're not making NBA, yeah.
Yeah, like if we could all start off, at the same level playing field of like physicality in sports, that'd be what socialism is. That's what it should be sold as.
Yeah, I agree. I guess like the perspective on like super capitalism is like, I guess like I don't know, it's a different area to approach when it comes to socialism because socialism's been like taboo for so long in this country. So like taking an approach with the like rhetoric to make like I don't know, like the whole thing about like marketing is like, like this new thing called super capitalism is like that approach is like people will like their eyes glitter when they hear it and then they want you.
Yeah, I'm the real capitalist.
Funny, interesting.
Oh
Yeah,
wait.
the funny thing is that like obviously if you like look into super capitalism, people are gonna go, well, no, that's not actually capitalism, that's like market socialism, etc., right? But it kind of doesn't matter what it actually is as long as the framing works, because I think that's how voters think.
Yeah, regular
I don't
people
think
don't know
most
that
voters
stuff.
look directly into policy; they just kind of see the catchphrase and they go, yeah, I like that, or I don't like that.
Yeah, definitely. They don't they don't know what market socialism. If you ask a voter what market socialism is, they'll probably be like, "Wait, you mean like the Soviets?" Like that'd be literally what they would think about it, you know.
Dude, if you ask most Republican senators what socialism is, they couldn't define it correctly either.
They probably couldn't define
it's-
conservatism. Honestly.
Yeah.
I think that's the far left's biggest mistake is just openly calling themselves socialists. I think they could have gotten so much more done if they hadn't started in that direction.
So I actually do. I guess I have a bit of an anecdote here. I remember meeting Bernie's campaign manager once at an event, and there was like a kind of a town hall like session going on there, and a lot of the voters were like, "Hey, why is Bernie calling himself a democratic socialist, even though his policies are more social democrat? Isn't like socialism putting that word in there just seems to be like a boogeyman that's waiting to drive votes away? You know, he didn't really have a good answer, but I think it's just a good example on how socialism as a word can be used as a boogeyman as a way to deter voters.
See, I don't even think they need to define it in them. They should just let the policy. Like think about Trump, right? He doesn't call himself anything specifically. He doesn't have like a specific. I mean, he has "Make America Great Again," but he doesn't say like, "Oh, I'm a populist." Like, have you ever heard Trump say the word populist? No, right? He just lets the policy speak for himself. He lets the personality speak
I
for
am a
itself.
real American. I'm a real
Exactly.
yeah.
So I think
Exactly.
the left sometimes they want to just have these terms that I think they think that they can use them to get people on their side, but it just always ends up backfiring. I think
Yeah.
that the left could be more successful just letting the policy
Well,
speak for
it's
itself.
the same thing about like I use my math example. If you try to teach some like
Mhm.
they're talking at the academic language point. Like Trump is so successful because he boils everything down to a third grade speaking level or a reading level. Like that's what they need to do. Like it doesn't need to be
Yeah.
complicated. People want to know how shit adds up. They don't care about the final equations. They don't care about white privilege or socialism. Well, they do care about that because they're afraid of it, the term. But that's one of the
Mhm.
reasons it scares them because it is pretty complicated to talk about how it would actually work. It hasn't worked throughout history, so how are you going to make the argument for it? And I know people, they'll probably yell at me for saying that if they're a socialist, like, oh, it wasn't real socialism. But yeah, you can only judge a system by how well it's been done so far. And if it's been overthrown by global capitalism, that's a flaw of the system, in my opinion. Like, did you? I'm sure y'all heard that argument because I'm sure you've heard like Destiny and shit and Vosh and stuff. Like,
Yeah.
these small socialist countries only failed because of a global capitalist empire. Like, where do you think the socialist state you want's gonna exist? On Mars in a different vacuum or some shit? Like, we're dealing with the real world here.
Yeah.
Do you think maybe just with technological advances, do you think the material conditions for most people just aren't bad enough yet to make them desire drastic change? Because the
100%.
last time we got big, what you could maybe even consider socialist change, that would be the New Deal, right? And I mean, I think for most people, the conditions they lived in at that point in time were a lot worse than they are now, and I don't think that it'll ever get back to that point. Simply just due to technology and things like that, I think it's hard for us to
Yeah,
see
that's
it.
the big
And
issue, right? Because
I wonder if we could ever, if people they're just happy enough that they won't rise up, they're just happy enough that they won't do anything, and they're just content to continue their life.
well, have you ever seen the numbers for inequality before revolutions? Like even before, okay, so before Rome collapsed, before France had a revolution, before Russia had the revolution, economic inequality reached like a certain level, and then it was pretty like at that point, at that point of inequality, there's two types of struggle people feel. It's the material conditions, like you just said, and also a power struggle, like they're not in control of their own lives and
Yeah.
their own government. Right now in America, people are fine. People feel great. Even though we are at the highest level of economic inequality of all time with any civilization in history, I'm pretty sure, other than like China probably. I don't know what
Well,
the
and
numbers are
yeah,
for them.
other countries that
Obviously, like
exist
the
today.
authoritarian countries are going to be different because they literally have a bunch of peasants and then they're a couple rulers.
Or
But
rich people. Yeah.
yeah, as far as democratic developed shit societies go, we are pretty unequal, but it doesn't matter
Yeah.
because people at the bottom you could be a poor ass person in most areas and have an iPhone and have flat screen
Right.
televisions and be on Twitter. And that isn't by mistake, by the way. All these socialist organizers on Twitter who don't have anything in real life because they're so poor, they're given that phone for a reason. It's what happens. The only struggle right now is a feeling that society isn't in control by the people; it's controlled by a world order. And if you only have that kind of struggle amongst a lot of people, then you're gonna be more open to like conspiracy thoughts. I would think. It's really interesting though because people comparing material conditions today don't have a good view of how that really compares to 100 years ago. Like they think
Yeah.
not having healthcare is a huge issue now, but 100 years ago, the issue was literally not being able to, find any food whatsoever for your entire family.
Well, yeah. I mean, I'm sure you've heard the paradox, right? Would you rather be a middle class American today or the richest person in 1850?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I think a lot of people would probably choose just a normal person today. Probably most people.
Yeah, I guess
But I was
deriving on this.
gonna. Oh,
No,
sorry,
go
I didn't
on.
mean to cut you off. I was gonna ask
No,
you a
no, go
question,
on.
Jolah. I mean, you were talking about income inequality, and this is something I've been reading a lot about recently. Um, and I agree with you that income inequality, it's only a problem. I don't think it's inherently a problem. It's only a problem because in our society, wealth is tied to power,
Yep,
and
yeah.
so the level of income inequality has led to an uneven distribution of power. But in the past, wealth wasn't always tied to power. So in the past, you could be a rich merchant from a poor family, and you would still have to like bow to a nobleman. So I wonder if rather than attacking income inequality as an inherent issue, we should attack the idea that wealth and power should be so closely related. I don't know how we would do that, but I wonder if that might be a more effective way of going about maybe just not making people realize that just having wealth. I mean, I worked in private wealth management, and the biggest takeaway I had is there's a lot of stupid rich people in America.
Yep. Yeah, if you go to
Yeah.
a fancy Ivy League school, like you're probably gonna get some pretty pretty silly kids who shouldn't be at those colleges. But they had like rich families and they took a big fancy SAT course to get them a high score or whatever, and their family made donations to the school and stuff like that. And that means you're going to be a leader in society because you went to a high university and you have a good family, obviously. But yeah, in this conversation, I would say we should differentiate power and income inequality, and we should stress that at the same time. Like if I'm talking to a regular person, I should say an argument like, when it comes to what we're going to be doing rhetorically, we should say there's income inequality, like, Jeff Bezos doesn't deserve to own more than 300 million people combined. That's a good way to get people motivated.
Right.
Although we know the big issue is power. Like, no one would care really if there is a trillionaire and they had no effect on society. The issue is our entire government is therefore owned by what is referred to as a shadow government, which is just a corporate state that people have no say in when we need it more democratized. So you can have a socialist. You can literally have a socialist, not a socialist economy because that would be full decommodification, but like you could literally have like a really socially democratic society with a huge welfare state and a couple people literally own like 99.9% of wealth, but still have a really good life because of how like monetary systems actually work, as long as power isn't tied to it and material well-being is taken care of for all people.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I feel like I don't know if you guys remember this like TikTok of this guy basically doing like rice, basically like $1 billion like accumulated by like rice or whatever, and like, oh, this is what $1 billion looks like, and then it's like, oh, this is how much Jeff Bezos is like worth or something like that, like a lot of people are like, I showed my parents this, and they were like, "This is insane! Like, there's no way, whatever, like, y- that like he has that much money." And then like I think he did like a following TikTok of like how much money like an actual human being can like utilize or whatever in one lifetime, and he's like, it didn't even do a dent on how much rice it was or something like that. And then my like I don't know. My mom and my dad are very like moderate. So like it definitely does change that tactic of like talking about, oh yeah, just tax the rich. Because
Um, yeah, can I
yeah.
just ask, this is sort of related to what you're saying. Can I ask, Parikh, since you're in you said you worked for financial stuff. So when it comes to forms of capital, am I wrong to say there's like, I would say myself, there's like 4 or 5 levels of capital, like of money. So like the first level would be like basic life, like you need money to eat and whatever. Second level would be like you need money to like own a house, I guess, and also maybe be able to buy a car. Third level would be like you have enough money to own a house, own a couple cars, a bigger house. Fourth level would be you have enough money to start a really successful business, and then fifth level of capital and money would be the investor and like corporate class. Would I be wrong to say there's like a hierarchy of that within a monetary system? Because like at the bottom there is a certain amount of money people can use, obviously for material means, but money and financial markets are much bigger than simply transactionary actions at the bottom for survival.
I mean, I would agree that there are levels. I don't know if you can define them as concretely as you just did.
Yeah.
And one of the biggest reasons is, I mean, when you look at capitalism, right, there's one of the biggest flaws in capitalism is small amounts of wealth differences lead to like lead to massive differences over time. And that's because of compounding interest, right? But that's also one of the biggest strengths because it's one of the simplest way for people to build wealth. So I think a better way to look at it would be at the base level, you have to have your basic needs covered. So you were saying a house and a car, right? That doesn't necessarily need to be owning a car. It could be leasing a car. It could be renting. It could be renting an apartment,
Sure.
whatever.
Yeah.
At the second level, you reach a point where you have enough capital to live your life without needing to rely on credit, right? And so that's the point where you could still be renting, but you're not in debt. You probably own your car. Um, you might have some debt, but you're not at a level where um, the credit is a necessity in your life. And then I would say the third level is a level of stability where you have extra money, you're past needing credit to live, you've got your stuff together, you have some money to invest. And then I think the fourth level is what you said was the fifth level, which is you can start a business, you can actually risk certain levels of wealth. But I mean, I wanted to ask you, like I said, right, one of the things people love about capitalism is you can take small amounts of money, and with good decisions you can turn them into massive you can turn them into big amounts of money over your life. But then that's also one of the big problems, because it leads to just small differences in income compounding into massive levels of wealth inequality. So how do you think we can address that without killing one of the big benefits of capitalism, which is that you could use compound interest to gain a lot of wealth?
Let me just answer Adam really quick in chat first. This is the biggest problem with the left. If you don't make 6 figures a year or own a home, you're destitute living on the streets. I literally said there's like, my description was literally 5 levels. And obviously what you said about credit ties into that as well. Living on credit isn't wealth, or ownership or whatever.
Yeah. I guess the
But
only
yeah.
thing like I would say is you're talking about like owning a car, right? I don't think you can tie them to material things. I think you have to look at I always look at it in terms of credit. Because if you live in a city and don't own a car, you could still be better off than someone who lives in a rural area and does own a car, or even
Yeah,
owns 2
and your
cars.
property value of owning or even renting an apartment in New York City is going to be much, much higher than buying a huge house in the or not suburbs, but in a rural area. Like you could buy a huge ass house where I'm from for the same price that you could barely rent a shitty New York apartment. So yeah, I'm seeing what you mean.
And I mean, you also have to think about this, right? So I mean, if you buy a house in the suburbs, what job, or not in the suburbs, but in a rural area, what job prospects does that give you? What opportunity to better your life does that give you? If you're buying a house and you own it, but you live in a really crappy area where there are no jobs, there's no economic mobility, that might not be inherently better than renting an apartment in a place like New York City, where you have a lot of opportunities to better
Well, that's the
increase your life
brain
and
drain
increase
thing,
your
and
income.
what you would say about increasing your life. Is your life going to be increased by living in a cramped room for most of your life just so you can be a higher capital owner and then maybe move out to a rural area and use your money there? Maybe. If you want to grow up, or if you want your kids to be raised in an area, or if you want to have kids, you could have huge house with a half-acre yard, and you could have a trail to an ATV park right behind you if you live somewhere else. So materially, I mean, you have to kind of make that comparison yourself, but you do hit on a big issue here, obviously, with brain drain out of these areas, and that's a big issue these areas are dealing with. If you go to college, obviously, you're not going to get a job in the freaking rural areas. You're going to move to a state capital
Right.
or a big city or an economic center in general. Our GDP production comes from like 4 places, like 90% of it,
Mhm.
doesn't it? Like LA, New York, and whatever
No, it's not.
others.
It's not that skewed, but yeah. But
Oh
you're
yeah,
you're on the
yeah.
right
I'm
track.
being hyperbolic. Cities in
Yeah.
general, like obviously,
Yeah.
and ports and air. Yeah, yeah. But yeah, people are moving out of, and this isn't only an economic issue. This is a political issue, because if all people who vote Democratic, and those are usually people that get educated, they're gonna be more
Mhm.
liberal and go and get money and move out of conservative areas, which these rural areas are gonna get more and more conservative as well. So with our government that favors land over everything else, um, with the Senate, each state gets 2 senators no matter what, and obviously with the Electoral College and even like state houses, in some areas with gerrymandering, how they can manipulate that. This is a big political issue. If every voter who's going to be making money and be more liberal is going to be living in Philadelphia, that's an issue as well. And I really don't know how to address that brain drain. I know people like Andrew Yang want human-centered capitalism. He wants to encourage businesses to build in rural areas, maybe make Amazon plants in those areas, but I don't know if that's actually a concrete solution to this problem. Maybe a better solution would be trains, more access, like you were saying, public transportation in and out of cities to make it more
Mhm.
accessible. If we can make I know they have been playing with the idea of faster trains. That might be better if you can move from central PA to Philadelphia in an hour. You can work a job in Philadelphia and still live in rural Pennsylvania, and your tax revenue will go there. And then the entire state government will be more balanced, and your local governments can meet more revenue expectations and run more programs, which is obviously a big cycle that reciprocates and, over and over again, and makes things skew in a different direction over time. So I don't know if you have any solutions for that directly.
I actually have one question. How much does land play a role? Like owning land play a role in like investments as well? Not to like derail the conversation. I was just curious on that aspect.
Was
Pretty
that
much.
directed to me?
Yeah, you might want to
Yeah,
answer that
yeah.
right away. But
Can you repeat the question?
How does land, like owning land, like you might not have to live there, like landlords example, owning that land part, but they don't like, um, well, they're making an investment in that. But I'm saying like, for example, a rural area, people will own land to go fishing or like farming X, Y, and Z compared to like something like a city, like making like a small business or building a
Oh, okay.
restaurant.
I
Yeah.
mean, owning land is just an investment, right? It's not necessarily going to be a better investment or a worse investment than, for example, buying a building. So, for example, if you buy a plot in the city, that's not necessarily worse or better than buying a ton of land out in the country. It really depends on what you do with that land. And so the big reason that land is going to be more expensive in cities and the big reason that people are going to want to invest in cities is going to be infrastructure. If you think about it, if you buy land in the country, the amount of development you need to do to get it to be a usable thing is going to be a whole lot higher. So it's less attractive for people to buy that land. But land isn't always going to be a great investment because a lot of land can depreciate or at least at the very least not appreciate at a high enough level. For most people, honestly, for most people, the best investment is usually going to be the stock market. When it comes to just getting guaranteed returns with the least amount of work, because that's ultimately what most people want. Would you agree with that? They want to just get the most return and not have to do a lot of work.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure I quite understood your question. So if I didn't fully answer it, feel free to expand.
I think no, like you answered it because I was just trying to understand the like that aspect of like owning land because like when it comes to like the left and like I don't know, I think I heard this conversation with Bosch when they were talking about like the Native Americans and like the ethno state conversation. And it was like a thing about like the United States and like land, like who prioritizing occupation of land and like how this like um I guess like this monopolization of like owning land and then Destiny was like talking about like oh like I don't understand why like people are so fixated on buying a house like you could just rent X Y and Z
No,
and
I
then
agree with Destiny on that. I don't think buying a house is always going to be your best. It's not. I mean, I think looking at buying a house as an investment, yeah, is kind of a mistake in a lot of ways because first off, in a lot of suburbs, especially in where I am right now, I'm in the Midwest right now, and a lot of this land and these towns are not really appreciating, right? Back where I was living in Texas, um, it's a different story. The land's appreciating a lot, and one thing you have to consider is a big part of the value. One of the problems with investing in land is a lot of the value from your land is going to be derived in what happens around you, and it's not going to be directly in your control, right? So if you buy a plot of land in a town and all of a sudden that town starts to fall apart and crime rates rise, you don't have any direct control over that, but you'll definitely face the effects. And so that's why a lot of people are skeptical to buy land. And that's why land's not always a great investment for everyone because it's not something you have direct control. Whereas, for example, if you invest in a stock and you realize that you think that stock is going to go down, you have 100% power to sell that stock and move your money into something else.
Isn't
But
this a
with
big
land, it's not
issue?
always so easy and it's not always in your control.
So
Doesn't
with
this
land is based. Go on.
No, I'm just saying the cultural differences between people, though. Doesn't this obviously put people who are in rural areas at a big disadvantage if our economy is based
Oh,
off of
absolutely.
investments and stuff?
Yeah,
Because
100%.
they literally want to work their 9 to 5 and buy a nice house to raise their family for 50 years, and then maybe give that, pass that house down. So I would be worried about like how are we going to make this thing more even? A transactional economy based on speculation isn't going to be something that's going to be stable, in my opinion, as we move to the future. So I'd have to ask like how are we going to even that out? But first whatever whoever else was about to talk, please say whatever you're going to say. Oh yeah, by the way, one other thing, thank you tons, Lucas, for becoming a patron with a tier 3. Thank you.
Yeah, no worries. I was just gonna ask Eric real quick. So in terms of like, aspects of like buying a house, like when you say that like there's a lot of factors we can't control, do we just like if one is to like look at the prospect of buying a house, would they have to like look at those factors and try to see if there's any good projections in those areas?
I mean, yeah, that's usually what people do, right? I mean, when they look at a house, they look at schools, they look at how's the neighborhood trending, how are the crime rates. But I guess what I'm trying to say is, it's not always predictive. Uh,
Hmm.
Towns they cap out a lot of these affluent suburbs, especially in the Midwest, which is just what I have experience on because I grew up there. they're pretty capped out, right? They're not the houses aren't really appreciating that much. And a lot of these people who bought their houses, especially like 10 or 15 years ago, they bought them as investments, but they're going to roughly break even or perhaps even lose money after they put their renovations in. So that's what everyone tries to do. But when it comes to housing market, these types of things are based on such large macroeconomic factors, and an individual has so little control. And unlike buying a stock, right? Buying and selling houses is hard. You can't just dump your house at any moment. You can dump stock really quickly if you need to. So typically, I mean, I agree with Destiny that a house shouldn't be your biggest investment, solely for the factor that you want something that's going to be easy to move in and out of cash in case things go wrong, because none of this stuff is in your control, right? I mean, if you buy stock, you have fuck all control over what the company does. You have no control over the stock price. But the key difference is it's really easy to get your money out of a stock, whereas it's pretty hard to get your money out of a house. So I know this argument from Destiny that you're talking about, and I do agree with him that people shouldn't be looking at. You can look at a house as an investment, but that shouldn't be the primary reason you buy a house. You should ultimately just buy a house because you want to live in that house and you don't want to rent it.
Yeah, and
Mhm.
I think this topic is very important for the left to like understand. I feel like it's really like I don't know. I get this focus on like sociology. Like we're so fixated on the philosophy argument and the sociology argument, but we don't really get a good hold of the economic argument and the fact that like people are like I feel like the left should be more engaged with the economy and knowing like the actual specific factors that are actually like affecting like these like cultures if I'm like making any sense.
Well, yeah, even on stock
Yeah.
buybacks and stuff, like progressives and well, okay, a simple economic concept is that you shouldn't just say corporations are evil. Of course, you can use that as a political like organizing method to get people, energized about a topic. But corporations are pretty amoral, and that's been tested over time. So like, if a government lets them have excess capital and they use it for stock buybacks, that isn't something you can really criticize those companies for. It might be smart for the company's production to do that. People on the left don't really understand that. And also, another thing they don't understand is guns. I don't want to say people on the left, by the way, because there is a movement of pragmatic progressivism coming up right now online. The big channels aren't there yet, but like I would say, even Destiny, Vosh, even the serfs in many senses, they're trying to be more pragmatic with how they approach being on the left. Socialism done left, all of them. But yeah, on guns, oh my god, people on the left don't know shit about guns.
Honestly, the
Oh
gun
yeah,
thing, that's a neo-lib problem. It's usually the
Oh yeah,
neo-libs who are
100%.
very dumb on guns.
That's why Bernie
For
had to
So when
do
Destiny,
you
that.
that's okay.
So when you say that
yeah.
it's an issue on the left, are you talking about like they're going too far on certain key issues on it, or maybe like universal background checks is too much? Like, is it too much, too little? Like, what do you mean that? I'm just
Well,
trying to
they
understand
can't
that
speak
concept.
to gun owners in general. Like if they bring up this is an assault rifle, but they don't understand that like an Armalite rifle with interchangeable parts is different from or is the same as a 556 caliber gun. Like if they don't understand the difference between what makes something an assault rifle and why that might be stupid to some gun owners that actually understand it, you're not going to be able to sell those policies to gun owners because politics is a lot about perception. If you have a freaking gun-toting lib come up or a gun-toting lefty come up and say, "Hey, I think if you know who John Fetterman is or something, he looks like a really big buff conservative man, but he's very progressive." If they come up and talk about guns, there will be more connection to gun owners if someone who actually knows shit about guns is talking to them. If you have a bunch of soccer moms coming up and talking about like what gun legislation should be, these people are not going to be happy about that whatsoever. And I would claim that Democrats, the root cause of gun violence and gun death in America is handguns and suicides and mental health issues. So 100%, if you really want to limit gun violence, I think you should be attacking those systems, not attacking guns. And it's bad politically as well. I think progressives in areas where Democrats can't do good because they're anti-gun, they should try to pick political power up there using that, honestly.
Well, I agree
Yeah,
with
like my whole
this. Mhm.
oh,
Go
you go
ahead.
ahead.
Go ahead,
Oh,
thanks.
okay. Yeah,
So, yeah, sorry, but that was confusing. Sorry, there's a bit of a delay on my end. But no, I completely agree 100% because I know someone personally who's like super into guns and they're like for universal background checks and stuff. But the one thing they kind of hate when they turn on the news or like see mainstream media is kind of like the term assault weapons because they're like, there's nothing like mechanically that defines an assault weapons to them. They're like, it's just a political term, and I don't like that as like a concept. Like, I'm all for universal background checks, but I want it to be done by people who actually understand, like, how guns work and also like what to categorize them. So I know that these background checks will be effective.
Yeah, uh, I totally agree. Especially like my home state in Virginia, like the number one topic is like guns right now. Especially like I don't know, based on like how like we vote it's blue, but like the large support in Republicans is like, okay, we need to get like the Senate seats. We need to get these Senate seats to be Republican so we can get rid of these like universal uh like these gun background checks and stuff. And like their main argument when it comes to is like Democrats don't know what your gun is and like how to shoot a gun, or they don't know what kind of guns are actually causing the problem. And it's like very frustrating because you're from a rural area and then like you're explaining like, hey, no, this is not the tactic you're supposed to go. And of course, like, I don't know. I'm sorry, I'm just all over the place.
Yeah, in the
But
primary though, it's hard. It's a hard political decision to make because if you want to win a Democratic primary, in order to get Democratic voters, you're gonna have to appeal to identity issues and also freaking gun issues, which is gonna be annoying. But I mean, if you're running in a rural area against like a normal Democrat, I think you can be fine going really to the right on guns. It's not even to the right, honestly. I don't like using a left and right paradigm for guns. It's literally just political in the U.S. When it comes to that like particular issue. You can't compare it to anywhere else in the world. Because the U.S. gun problem is so unique, and I know they bring up like Australia, like oh they have no guns already. Like okay, when they got rid of guns, they only had like zero point 0.5 per person or whatever. In the U.S., there's literally 400 million guns and like 300 million or 340 million people. It's a totally different issue. Guns are not disappearing. We should be fixing root causes. But yeah, I'm probably gonna log off, guys. Thank you guys for chatting and also for the first person who came in. If you guys have anything last to bring up on our conversations, please do so.
Yeah, so if we want to set up a conversation with you, how do we do that? Email is what you're saying?
Yeah, that one thing you wanted to talk about, public option versus Medicare for all. If you want to do that like next week, I'd prefer to do it like maybe like Sunday next week. That'd be a
Message
good
me
day
on
for me.
Discord. I'm pretty free.
All right, yeah. So if you want to email me any like resources or anything to look at, yeah, that would work.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyone
Sounds
else?
good.
Just want to say, hope you all having a happy new year, and I enjoyed the channel, and I also enjoyed the concept of more of like pragmatic, progressive channels rising up.
Yeah, thank you all. And thank you everybody who is watching. I'll move you guys out right now, actually. But yeah, have a good night, everyone.
yeah, you too. Thank you. Keep doing what you're doing.
All right, thank you, thank you. All right, thank you everybody who watched. And also, of course, who donated. Soon you'll see my new microphone. I'm selling this thing. It's gonna sound better. But shout out your chat name when you're on with Jolah. Yeah, that'd be cool. That'd be cool. Well, that's this is Parikh is the economic person, you know. He's the finance guy. He's the liberal. He's the neo-lib. You're my new favorite reasonable lefty. Thank you. Thank you. I'm trying to approach this in a, you know, non like idealist, ideological, obsessed way. Oh yeah, I have to. Well, Collins are weird though because I don't want to say their username or their name because I don't want if they okay say someone calls in really late if they call in at the end of a stream I'm not gonna I could ask them if they're in chat and say their YouTube chat name but I don't want to accidentally dox anybody's username or their real name or something so yeah I'll start asking if they're in YouTube chat to say what their name is so you guys know which chatter it is that called in. Thank you everybody. Oh, thank you Lucas. Thank you for another donation. Thank you. Let me convert it. Let's see. SEK to US. Cool numbers. 35. Thank you for the $4.23 donation. All right, everybody, have a good night. If you want to be updated on my stuff, of course, you could go to follow me on Twitter for my terrible takes. Here's my Twitter link. There's Twitter, Discord. Michael Jordan never called in. The Michael Jordan fan never called in, so oops. I don't know if they wanted to or not, but they weren't in the call-in lobby at all, so I guess not. They yelled at me for not having a phone number available, but Erica had it covered. Thank you, Erica. Round numbers are for noobs. True, true, true. Well, you used the round number basically, right? But, you know, the conversions. There's Discord, and also, if anybody, I mean, where the other links are if you want to support by anyway, but, all right. Good night. Oh yeah, I put a new chat in Discord. I don't get enough people to. Okay, I'm not gonna notice every comment now. If we have like 90 to 100 people or 200 people or whatever, I'm gonna notice most of them. I won't be. I probably see your comment. I probably 100% see your comment, but there's not always a place in the conversation to reply to all of them. Which is why I have to prioritize like super chats more. Because if I'm having a conversation for 2 hours and people are asking me, 20 questions every like 10 minutes or every 5 minutes, I can't really stop the conversation and ask that question and answer it all the time. But thank you for definitely watching and everything. I see your comment though. But if you want to ask me anything specifically, if you want to see my opinion on anything, I put a new chat in Discord calling a during stream chat, extra chat. So yeah, put your whatever's in there. I'll check that one after streams, if there's anything to look at and all that stuff. All right. Good night.